thank you, Asraka. Gifted memberships. Alright. I'm gonna go join the thing. It's gonna be a very productive conversation. Okay, I'm gonna move in our moderator first, but no ex-party communications, so he'll come in first. And then also, here we go. Hey,
Color
folks,
retarded.
how are you doing?
How are you?
Welcome, everybody. You're live right now. Heads up.
That's wonderful.
Awesome. Well,
Are we showing faces?
I think
We're not showing faces.
You can. I think people would want to see you. So, but I am just quickly showing before I show your face. I want to just make sure that because I do want to agree that the prompt I have written out here is the correct prompt, which is Pisco relies on extended filibustering, Gish Gallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions. That's the debate prompt, right?
I believe so. I only heard like the last half of that sentence. I think you cut out for just a second.
All right. So let me just repeat it one more time so we have total agreement. The prompt is the proposition that you're supporting. Pisco relies on extending filibuster, Gish Gallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions.
Yes, 100% correct.
Okay, that is the correct prompt. And so just let me pop you so you can see me, and then people can see you. Just 1 second. And why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Okay. Well, my name's Josh, computer engineer, startup guy. I live in Las Vegas. It's awesome. It's only where the cool people live. Because here's the cool thing about Vegas. Almost everybody comes to Vegas. And even if you don't come to Vegas, it's one of few towns on the planet everybody knows.
It's a cool town. I've been there. It's pretty hot sometimes. But you know, I actually really like my time in Vegas.
Oh, it's hot as hell, man. There's 2 months out of the year I don't like hanging out too much.
And
everybody comes to Vegas.
So I appreciate you coming in, just transitioning, so people are going to be able to see you in just a second. 3, 2, 1, go. And with us as well as sorry, give me again your given name. Do you prefer that I call you that name or Streamrift?
Streamrift is going to be easier.
Okay.
My name's Josh Stacy. I don't hide behind it. I don't care, but so you can call me Josh or Streamrift. Either one's just fine.
Awesome. And with us as well is a moderator from the community, and who also, I believe, you have your own podcast, Gilmore. So Gilmore, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Gilmore. I was dragged in to moderate this conversation between the two of you. I do have my own show, The Gundam and Gilmore Show, available on YouTube and Spotify and other apps. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, so the first thing maybe we should do is, well, either I can give you the time to lay out what your claim is here, Streamrift, or I could tell you what I understand this to be, what the claim means.
Let's start with just the very exact words, and then we'd had it in chat, and I'm going to type it out so that way it's on my screen. Okay. But the claim is essentially you Gish Gallop and you filibuster to avoid actually engaging with things. That's the essence of it. But if you have the exact words up, go ahead.
Yeah,
give them to me. I'll write them. I'd love to hear what you think.
So it's like a sentence fragment, but I still understand it. So Pisco relies on extending filibustering, Gish Gallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions, and I assume it's and to avoid resolving core questions, right? So to overwhelm time and also to avoid resolving core questions, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. And so I understand, and you can tell me, I can give you my interpretation of this, of what it means, not taking a view on it, but just to make sure that we agree on what it means.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to contextualize it just a little bit too. This will just take 30, 60 seconds. Last night we got on a panel. Now, I'll admit panel dynamics can sometimes get folks a little worked up. Maybe sometimes we get a little more amped up, but that's where this is coming from. I feel like this is a perfect explanation of what happened last night. So go ahead. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So the way I understand this is either that I did this on one instance, or that I did it in that I have a tendency to do it. And I would understand like Pisco relies on this that the fact that it's sort of stated in a present tense to be kind of a judgment of how I tend to approach issues. Not that I always do it, but that I tend to do it. That this is a tactic that I rely on with regularity, right? It's not, and so it wouldn't be enough to just show that I did it in one time. It would be you'd have to show that like this is the kind of thing I do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't just saying Pisco one night was this way.
Okay.
It's he relies on this. This is a part of the structure of the way he interacts with discussion.
Cool. So I disagree with that proposition. I think it's
Really
false. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Well, do you want me to give you my affirmative case of why I think it's false, or do you want to give your case for why you think it's true?
Well, so I'll go this way. I think in good faith discussion, which so far it sounds like we're in, it's incumbent on both sides or all of the sides, if there's more than one, to actually try to understand each other. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I understand you're an attorney. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you a practicing litigator?
I was. I mean, I'm not in practice right now, but I plan to take some cases in the the new year.
Right. So fundamentally,
I left my
your
firm.
arguments. Okay, and just side note, impressive. Congrats on passing the bar, being an attorney. That's all. That's not something that just idiots get. So credit where credit's due.
I think that people overstate the importance.
Yeah, that's debatable.
Degrees.
But all right. I'm trying to be nice.
Passing the bar is like a minimum competency threshold. It's not that impressive, to be honest, in my opinion. Gilmore, I don't know if you agree with that or disagree.
Yeah, I agree, but besides the point.
All right. Well, so the fact of the matter is, at the state court level, a lot of times you've got trial attorneys strategies, where a lot of times it's narrative, just push, tell a story, paint the version of facts you want, and don't let the other side speak. And on the other end of that, we take a look at maybe appellate law, and it's more about the actual rules of procedure and making sure that things did happen properly. And I think that you very squarely would fit very well in narrative law, and that based off of last night, supported by the fact that it doesn't sound like from the chat, from the comments, anybody was surprised that this was, I mean, I heard the phrase Pisco was being Pisco. I'm assuming that's coming from somewhere. And so I don't think it's an isolated incident. The fact of the matter is you do have a reputation. Again, hats off to you on that. You've gone out and you've gotten a lot of attention, but a lot of the attention is, and I'll say this, it sounds like it's been happening, escalating more recently. That's what sort of the herd seems to think. Do you think you've been steady Eddie the whole time? Or if not, what's your affirmative case for how you're good faith and how you don't gish gallop and how you don't run the clock?
Well, I have an affirmative view on the proposition of the debate, which is that it's negative. That is, I don't rely on extending filibusters, and I don't use gish gallop tactics for the purpose of overwhelming time and resolving core questions. That's my view on it. We can talk about something else if you want to. A lot of your framing there, I disagree with, but I think it's kind of tangential. Like you're, splitting up between like narrativizing of trial versus narrativizing and appealing. I think it's an oversimplification. I think both, sets, both appellate lawyers and trial lawyers, or even litigators, and like in all aspects, are telling stories. And I think that the bifurcation that you've
that's
offered
not what the pleadings say.
What's that?
That's not what the pleadings say. That's not what the pleadings say. If you read appellate pleadings, they read different than, for example, the most extreme example would be like a family court. But even if you just do a state court, civil court, a nice, like a circuit court, civil docket, in state courts, it's a lot more theatrical. It's a lot more narratives. It's a lot more adjectives. When you get in the district court, temperature simmers down. When you get to appellate law, it simmers down even more. Not to say there aren't, narrative attorneys at the appellate level, but generally speaking, for example, most circuits aren't going to put up with that sort of antics that you see at the trial level.
Yeah, I guess I don't agree with your characterization of what lawyers tend to do either at the appellate level or at the trial level. I think that that's not true, your distillation there, but I think it's tangential to the topic. But I just want to signal that, I kind of want to stay on topic, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great. Run at it.
So my view, and you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You haven't. I believe I've laid out my case. Go ahead and make your case.
Well, hang on, because I don't think that you actually supported the case. I think you've just said,
so here's
some
my
people
foundation.
said Pisco being Pisco. That doesn't prove your case that Pisco relies on extended filibuster and gish gallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions. So you haven't provided a case yet, in my opinion.
Okay. So here's the evidence. You might reject it. You might say it's insufficient. Here's the evidence for the claim. One, last night I was on a panel with you, and Admiral Gibbs has a hard time shutting up. Real hard time shutting up. He showed up. He hadn't said shit. And you kept yapping and yapping and yapping. And I said, I'm not going to say anything till Admiral Gibbs gets to say something. And for 20, 30 minutes, you keep yapping and yapping and yapping. Gibbs couldn't get much in. Then the support. So that's data point one. And data point 2 is your general reputation and the reactions from any of the circles I've seen where folks have been discussing this that are familiar with you and in the environments that you've been in like this. So you can reject that. You can say that's not enough evidence, and that's fine. I don't have much more evidence than that. That's the data point. Go ahead.
So on one, let me do it in reverse order. The reputation point. I think I have the opposite reputation. I have the reputation not for gish galloping, but overtly. I think it's a false reputation. I don't think it's true, but like overly simplifying and doing things in yes or no and like making the question as direct as possible. That's like the opposite of a gish gallop. That people will say, "Oh, you're not allowing for people to expand on their answers, and you're not allowing for people to, for the conversation to be more fluid." So I don't think I have a reputation for gish galloping. I think I have, if anything, the reputation
That's
for
the
the opposite,
filibustering
which again I reject.
No, that's filibustering.
As for but a filibuster presupposes, I think you would agree with this, some desire, some intention to like run out the clock, and that is also part of your answer there. But that isn't my reputation. My reputation is that I will, because we're looking at the reputation part, I will spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours going into particular issues and leaving my open chats, open VCs, and we'll have like endless conversation about a given topic. And that again is the opposite of trying to overwhelm time and avoid resolving core questions. I have a reputation for exhaustively going on a topic and entertaining all people who will ask all sorts of questions. So I think your reputational argument is not just like wrong reading, it's like literally the opposite.
Well, so like last night, for example, I thought one of the stupid and bad faith things that you did was you said, assuming it's unconstitutional, would you support this? And I rejected the premise. I answered it anyway. And you didn't listen to any explanation about why, even if it was unconstitutional, I would have supported it. And the problem, back to the filibustering here, is I have no doubt that you go real deep, and Lactoid even was commenting on how you'll hyperfixate on things. And I'm not going to dogpile him on this, but just using that as a data point on hyperfixation, I believe you think certain points are important and you spend a lot of time on them. But when you deliver for 5 minutes of backstory, then you offer a yes, no question, then you don't allow any elaboration. That is running the clock and not letting the other side speak. It's not letting the arguments do the work. It's controlling the frame.
Yeah, so I'm not
Which
sure.
is what narrative lawyers are meant to do, and that's why we have rules of procedure. So this way, there's reasonable pushback in an adversarial system. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure. Are you suggesting that by me trying to get clear and direct answers from Lactoid and saying yes or no, and then when he says let me expand further, then I let him expand further? That is, I did. So the moment you're talking about, I say yes or no. He says yes, and then I try to go on. He's like, well, let me explain. I stop and then let him explain further. I'm just going to ask you straight up. That is, I'm just telling you, I'm representing, that is what occurred. And my question for you is that example of good faith or bad faith, or not, or neither?
That's an example of good faith.
Okay,
and
so
if you were more like
what you
that,
just pointed to,
so
what you just pointed to wasn't an example of bad faith. You just said by your own words that was an example of good faith.
All right, I'll tell you what you're doing here.
Okay,
you find one exception that does not disprove the theme. You latch onto that. You've got a great trial attorney mind. I think you do fabulous in court. Have no doubt on that. The question isn't whether or not sometimes you're good faith. I'm willing to say sometimes you're a good faith. Now, if Lactoid wasn't, well, let's separate the Lactoid part out of it, though. So
that's the example you brought up, though.
Normally do that with people?
That's yes.
Do you think you normally do that with people?
Yes, and that is the example you brought up.
Okay,
yes.
So last night when I explicitly said, there was a point relatively early on, I said, can I just have 15 seconds? And you went on for at least 10 minutes. What was unreasonable about my ask for 15 seconds to ask you a question to actually head in a direction that might have been perhaps more interesting or useful?
I don't think I can answer the question because it's a false premise. The false premise being,
okay, I'll find the clip later.
That you asked for 15 seconds and I took 10 minutes speaking time, which is
5 to 10. But I'll grab the clip.
Do you really think that I spoke for 5 minutes uninterrupted at any point in that discussion?
Pretty much. Oh yeah.
Do you actually?
You did a great job of holding them. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And do
you want me to do like a deep retrospective on this, or are you just fucking with me? Because I don't like taking the bait.
No,
if you genuinely
I think it's
you're cutting me off now.
Wait, one second. So if we're going to discuss how long the actual monologue was, if you want to describe it that way from Pisco, you can find the clip and play. It's not worth, guessing how long it was one way or the other. We could have a definitive answer on that. So
yeah. So let's find the clip.
So the clip is from last night. I don't know the timestamp.
Do you remember what the thing was about that you're saying is bad faith? right? You're
So
making the
let's
claim
say
this is
around
an
the
example
time.
of bad faith. So I want to know what it's generally about, if you
No,
remember.
the claim is that you rely on filibustering and gish gallop to overwhelm the time and avoid resolving core
Right.
questions.
Right.
So we're going off in some really strange directions here.
Well, this
The
is where
fact
you
of the
took it,
matter
right?
is,
You took it here. Agreed. The two
you
examples you
said you
provided so
brought up
far.
one example.
So two examples you brought up so far have been your examples, correct? So the first one was the lactoid example, where you said that's an example of good faith. Actually, there's nothing wrong with that. And the second one was this one where you're claiming that I spoke at length when you just asked
But you
for a
don't
15-second
normally do
introduction.
that. That's what you smuggled in.
Well,
You
no,
smuggled
but
in the
you haven't
claim
made that. You
as
haven't.
if-
You haven't shown that. It's my claim that I do give room when people want to expand their answers to say further than yes or no. I do. That's my claim, and you're saying you don't, and I'm like, okay, well, what's the justification for that? And then you moved off, and now you're talking about the amount of time. So both of these, you're saying we're going into a weird area.
So I just asked
these
you
are
a
the
very
examples
specific
you
question
brought.
and made a specific point, and you're doing the monologue run over. So here's the thing: you brought up one example in that discussion where I believe you were behaving in that narrow fashion in good faith.
So you brought that up.
I gave you that.
You brought
and
that
as
up.
a result,
You brought that case up. I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
Cutting me up now. As a result of me giving you a valid point for free, because I am good faith here, you say, well, if I did that once, then it means I'm always good faith, is what you imply.
No,
on
that's
that.
not what I
the
said.
argument you
No, that's
smuggle in there.
Sorry. No, that's
smuggled an argument.
Wait. I just want to appeal to the moderator. A, who brought up the example of lactoid that you heard, moderator? And B, did I make the claim that because I acted once in good faith, that therefore I'm always good faith? I don't think I made that claim. Or did you hear that, Gilmore?
Yeah, so Streamriff definitely brought up the lactoid point first. My understanding of what your response was that he brought up the lactoid point. You were saying that's an example of me being in good faith, and that's kind of where we left it at. You didn't say you were always in good faith because of that one example. You just say the one example he brought up was an example of you being in good faith.
Yeah, I think that's right. You disagree with that, Streamrift?
So we'll use that as our shared space right now. You brought up that's one example. If I was gonna,
let's not focus. How about this? I think just to streamline it, bring up different examples of him being in bad faith, and then we can go from there.
All right, sure. I'll give you an example. Pisco, would you agree that when you're arguing, you like to lay out your case, ask a yes/no question, and then just keep running with it? Do you agree that that's your style, or not so much?
Not so much, because I think that I should do that more.
Okay.
I think that oftentimes I just start Socratically, and I don't lay out my full structure before I get into the questions. I just go right into the Socratic stuff. And so I think that sometimes when
I don't think you're Socratic at all, or you don't have any comprehension of what that actually means.
So which claim do you want to deal with first? One, that I'm not Socratic, or two, that
Socratic.
I don't know? Okay, so I just want to deal with the claims first. So A, do you want me to deal with your contention that I am not Socratic, or B, that I don't know what being Socratic means? Which of those do you want me to address first?
B.
Okay, so I understand Socratic to be engaging in like a dialectic of questions, asking questions to get to underlying truth. And the Socratic method is one that's often used in law school to try to get to a shared understanding by asking questions that lead to certain places, like Socrates used to do. That's my understanding of Socratic. Do you think that that's a off-base understanding of Socratic?
Let's shade it in more. And the Socratic
wait. Can I just get you to answer that first? So do you think that?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good definition. No. So one of the things that I try to do, which I view as good faith, maybe it's not, is instead of trying to categorically reject everything you just said, find the shared space in what you said and build on it. But Socratic teaching, we're having someone say, "Hi, if I'm teaching you Pisco," and I know I should know this. Is it Pisco, something else? Pisco. Okay, I apologize. So, Pisco, if I say, I'm going to teach you in a Socratic way, most of the time I'm asking a questions to encourage your thought and have you be speaking. So if you're using the Socratic method, you're largely leaning more towards you're controlling the dialogue and asking a question. And the only overlap I really see is you do ask some questions. Technically, I don't think you lean into the method itself.
So the question first is whether wait. Sorry. The question you asked, I gave you two choices, A or B, is whether I employ the Socratic method, or B, whether I understand the Socratic method. I asked you which you want to address first, and you said B, whether I understand it. And what you've just provided just now is an example of how I'm not applying the Socratic method, but you haven't made the case that my understanding of it is incorrect.
Okay. So what you described is not the Socratic method.
Okay. In virtue of what is it not the Socratic method?
So I'm going to use the Socratic method with you to explain the Socratic method if you'll consent. Do you
No,
consent?
no, I didn't. I don't want a question. I want answers.
Okay. So if you're using the Socratic method, you're asking probing questions to get the other side to think. You're not for shoving the narrative at them. That's a core difference. It's an inversive relationship to what you do.
So what
It's
about
fine.
what,
I'm not saying
hang
everybody
on,
has to
hang
go
on.
Socratic, but you're out of.
What about what I said when you asked me what this when I tried to explain what I understood the Socratic method to be does not map onto what you said. You know, asking questions to get to share truths.
It goes to the intent and the rhythm of it. See, like right now, I think you're being pedantic for the sake of mental masturbation. I don't think we're actually trying to come to a shared understanding.
Do you think it's bad faith? So you accuse me of not understanding a term, Socratic. It seems like, in sum and substance, our understandings of that term largely align. It's a way to get to truth via
No, categorically they don't. Let me ask you this: can you steel man my version of it?
I honestly cannot because I'm trying.
Why is that?
I think it's because I think that we are aligned on the meaning of the term Socratic by and large. And so, given that I think that we are aligned,
you created a definition that you believe you can defend, and so this is what I'm going to say: a particular tier of argument style where you force a definition and make sure the other side has to stay on that definition. Problem here is your definition is foundationally flawed. It's at its core.
I'm asking for the case for
Socratic,
that. Wait, no, so I'm asking for your case.
The defining hallmark of a Socratic method is asking questions to encourage the other side to think and reconcile the conflicts on their own. The goal is to walk through it with them.
What's the justification
and have
for that?
them internalize?
What's the justification for that claim?
What do you mean? Try that again in English.
Yeah. What is the justification for the claim that the central element to the Socratic method is what you just described there?
Because that's the core of how the learning process works under a Socratic method.
That's just repeating the claim. I'm asking for a justification for the claim.
How would you mean?
So I understand when we're trying to get to words' meanings, people will sort of tend to point to things that would elicit the usage of the term and the concepts, how it's being used by certain situations or certain people. So, for example, people will point to dictionaries or will point to.
Do you believe in absolute truth?
I don't know what that means.
So some people believe in a subjective truth or a my truth, right? 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion truths. Other people believe there's one truth, things are the way they are, and there's one absolute truth. So, do you understand that definition of absolute truth?
I don't understand that you just provided one. You just said that some people believe in it, but it didn't explain what absolute truth is.
So do you know what truth is?
I understand truth to be something that coheres with reality.
Okay, so absolute truth would be the absolute extension of that.
I don't know what you mean by absolute.
Too much for you? The bedrock of actual reality, the foundation, the four corners of actual existence.
Yeah, I
I
don't know what that means. You're just putting in other, I think, mushy words that don't get to the underlying concept you're trying to evoke. The bedrock.
So, are you trying to understand anything here? Please tell me you're not trying.
Just to get back on page here. So, I'm a little concerned that we might get off path here.
I mean,
Stream Riff, do you want to say what your connection to absolute truth is to the rest of this conversation, just so I know kind of where you're going here?
Yeah, so if there's an absolute truth, then we can have shared definitions. Right now, Pisco is arguing that there's not a shared definition of Socratic method. I have a definition. I believe it's grounded in the general consensus that nearly everyone uses. However, he refuses to either engage with that or provide
I didn't say that. No, wait,
allegiance to that.
So yeah, if I think I could help bring this together. So I believe what Pisco was arguing or saying was he was asking you where you get your view of what the Socratic method is, whether it be a dictionary, whether it be someone else's teachings, like actually from what source you get your definition for what the Socratic method is.
So I wouldn't know where I would find my definition for water under that same context. I will say I use language models now as a tool. I think anybody that's not is lying. And I ask it for right size definitions. ChatGPT, the definition was given here. is the Socratic method works by asking a sequence of disciplined probing questions that force someone to articulate assumptions, test internal consistencies, and follow their claims to the logical consequences.
That sounds like, does that sound exactly like what I do?
No, you're out of your fucking mind if you think that. And the mod might be able to help us here.
All right, so Stream, how do you think he does not engage in that?
Okay, so he's not doing it to test assumptions. We'll just start with just that one piece right there. For example, if you ask a yes or no question, and then when there's a yes or no given, keep running, you're not really probing or testing back or pushing anything on it. Think of it as if under a Socratic approach, you're actually asking questions and waiting for the answer. They're discipline questions. Pisco went through long rants about lots of stuff. And I'll say, I love it when people provide context before they ask a question. Gives us context. That's nice. It might even be a great way to argue it's not Socratic. And the underpinning, the through line on Socratic is if someone's asking those probing questions, they're trying to encourage the discussion on the other side, not be pulling the full attention of the discussion.
Okay, so I think whether or not it's Socratic might be relevant to this. What do you think Pisco's purpose is for asking those yes or no questions?
So the cleanest version is it's a prop so that way he can pretend that he's letting the other side speak and he can just keep going on. In application, that's what it ends up doing.
Do you think he's unconcerned with the other person's response to those questions?
Yes.
Really?
Okay. And if Pisco,
as evidenced by,
yeah, I do.
I want to hear that.
Give your evidence first. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. As evidenced by, if you gave a shit, one, you wouldn't frame them into these strange binaries that force folks to let you smuggle in baked in presuppositions. If it was Socratic, you'd go step by step and start at water is wet, work them through it. And then two, you don't actually let them speak. Those two hallmarks are the test that you fail at miserably. That's my claim.
So the claim you're just saying is I force people into false dichotomies. First of all, I don't feel that I do that, but oftentimes I will add words like if any or if at all, or I'll say like, do you think that you do the X or Y, or if any of those? So I will often try to make an effort to prevent a false dichotomy, but it's totally, if I do sometimes phrase a question in which it's a false choice or a false dichotomy, the other side can just simply reject the framing and say, oh, I object to the question. The question is a false dichotomy, or it's a compound question, or I can't answer that question yes or no. That question doesn't call for yes or no. And so all of that is perfectly within the capabilities, or what I assume to be the capabilities, maybe not of every interlocutor, but what I assume when I'm treating people like adults, they're capable to do. So I just don't understand what's the problem with asking for yes or no questions when I feel that it's appropriate. So long as I don't force people into dichotomies, either when it's objected to or, I do my best efforts to try to not have a false dichotomy by using terms like if at all or if any.
Well, let's use an example from last night.
Okay.
You said, assuming it was unconstitutional, would you still support it?
Yeah.
I pushed back and I said, I reject your premise. Now, if we were having a discussion and you're trying to understand what the other side thought, which no one says you have to, but since you showed up and you're claiming that's what you want, there's actually some threads to pull on that one. If it was a Socratic environment and that's what you thought you were, you'd actually be engaging in that. You didn't. That's fine.
Except that's
not saying you have to do this.
That's a
the
question.
claim is that you are, and you're just not.
So that question, what is the false premise in the question? It's a question.
So you're the fact that you're even pushing back on this is worth taking note.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter, you start off assuming that if it was assuming that it's unconstitutional, which is incoherent, but fine. Hypotheticals are a great way to test things and engage with that.
Wait, it's incoherent. I just want to make sure I understand. You think it's incoherent?
Just cut me off again.
Wait.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Let me finish that point. Yeah, let me finish that point, and then we'll get into the substance of it.
Right. The problem is you're completely controlling the framing, asking very narrow questions, and then as soon as the other person has not even stopped speaking, you just start running at it, going off on your next point. If you're Socratic, you're trying to orient to the person you're interacting with and figure out where they're at and meet them where they're at. That's not what you do, not even close.
So the first thing I'm trying to address, because you're putting out a lot of claims here, and so I want to respect what you're saying and address all of them. You first state that the question is improper because there's an element of it that is incoherent. I understand incoherent to be something either that like entails a contradiction or that it's like you can't understand it, right? Something like that. The question that's what you said, right? Like it's incoherent to assume that an action taken by the president abroad would be unconstitutional against the U.S. Constitution. And I'm asking you, let's deal with that first. One, why or what is your explanation that it's incoherent, by which you mean you can't understand what it would mean for a presidential action taken abroad with respect to military authority to be unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitutional? Go ahead.
But there you smuggled in a definition of incoherent. I'm
What?
thinking.
No, I'm just telling you what I meant. Wait, stop.
Okay.
Wait. We're going to stop. Gilmore, I said what I understood incoherent to be. Now, is it fair in your mind, Mr. Moderator, to call that smuggling in?
So I think the phrasing makes it worse, but I think Streamuff, just say your definition of incoherent, and then we could kind of press into that issue.
Yeah. So when I'm saying incoherent, the fact of the matter is that you start off with assume that the moon is made of cheese. Should we have Congress allocate funding to go there? It's such an incoherent presupposition. It doesn't warrant further indulgence other than pure fancy.
What do you mean by incoherent? What do you mean by incoherent?
Let me finish.
You're never going to get to it. You should explain what you mean by coherent.
So it is such an incoherent statement to claim that the president of the United States has done something in foreign policy furthering national interests that it's unconstitutional. It's challenging to engage with. Now, because I'm good faith, I still answered your question when you asked it. But you
could you if it's incoherent?
It's such a strange.
How can you answer an incoherent question? How can you answer? Wait, can I ask a question? How can you answer a question that's incoherent?
Who's stopping you? You obviously have no problem running.
How is it? No. How is it
right,
possible?
Here's something interesting happened. Let me
answer an incoherent question.
Let me answer. You just used a definition of incoherent. I offered a different one, and I offered why it was incoherent.
You didn't
under my definition.
Moderator, did he?
You went back
moderator,
to yours.
Did he offer a definition of incoherent? Yes or no? Sorry.
I think he did, but
what was the definition? What was the definition? What was the definition?
Yes or no, me. I think his definition was that it was so
absurd,
unreasonable that he couldn't imagine it. Basically,
that's so your definition of incoherent is it's so absurd that you can't imagine it.
Was that? I want to rephrase it. Steamer, is that basically what you were saying?
It's so. The example I used was if we assumed the moon was made of cheese. This is the illustrative example after I gave the descriptor. The illustrative is that the moon is made of cheese. How much money should Congress allocate to going and grab it? The foundation of it is so nonsensical. It's coherent. When I say it's made of cheese, we know what I mean when I say cheese. Now, maybe Gouda, mozzarella, cheddar, we can be pedantic about that. But it's just the whole premise of it is nonsensical.
Okay, so just to clarify, when you say it was incoherent, it sounds like really what you mean is it's so outlandish or so not in your reality that it's hard to even envision answering the question because the premise is so ridiculous. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. And to clarify, it might be a little bit, it might not have been the perfect word. I don't think it was an unfair criticism of it. And again, Pisco, if you were trying to understand, if you're some Socratic debater, that'd be a great opportunity for you to say, hey, I don't know what, you say that, here's this other thing. And if you're actually going for shared understanding and shared truth, why burn ammo on skirmishes like this?
Is a moon made of cheese coherent? Is a moon made of cheese coherent?
Why are you cutting me off?
Because you're rambling.
How is that rambling?
Finish. We'll not get to the meta. Finish your point, and then we'll go on to it.
Well, part of the problem is every time you disrupt like this, it resets. And so that's a part of what's so offensive about it. So we'll try this again.
Sure.
Pisco, you offered a definition for incoherent. I didn't agree with it. I offered another one. And instead of disagreeing with that one or engaging with that one or trying to bridge the two, you just go back to yours and want to fight over the semantics. And again, I think in narrative law, you'd do fantastic. I think in a parallel law, you'd get just destroyed because you're not looking at the structure of the arguments. If you were a good faith Socratic debater, what you would do here is you would try to find some definition we both agree on with incoherent, or, and this is probably the better one, understand that the claim that it was incoherent probably wasn't even hyperbole, even though hyperbole is an accepted rhetorical tool. And so I said, it's such an outlandish thought to begin with. And if I had said outlandish instead of incoherent, perhaps that would have been better word choice. But if every time your opponents use words that are slightly off, you're going to make a federal case out of it, it's challenging to believe you actually want to get to the bottom of anything. Go ahead.
So is it your position or is it not your position that the presidential military strike, it's incoherent to think that it might be unconstitutional? You can just answer it.
Yes.
It is incoherent. And by incoherent, what do you mean?
The framework of the Constitution gives the President of the United States so much broad executive authority. It's nonsensical given that situation, because that's what we were talking about, was in Venezuela, was not constitutional. I was giving you a threshold. When you ask a question like you did and you want an answer, there's some dignity implied by giving you just a clean answer. And so giving you honest feedback, an honest answer is, I think it's such, and in the context of this discussion, I'm going to say I probably should have used the word outlandish. It's such an outlandish presupposition. It's hard to even take it seriously as a hypothetical. That's what I probably should have said.
Sure. So the issue here is, in my understanding at least, if the hypothetical is incoherent, then you're actually not able to answer it because you can't even understand the premise to begin with.
Hence, it's bad
If it's
faith.
so outlandish, if it's so outlandish, you could still potentially answer it and say, hey, I can't imagine that happening in the first place, but this
Here's
is
the
my
answer.
Response why.
Right.
So that's my understanding. Maybe
That's why
you see it
it's,
differently.
so
Sure,
this is why it's relevant, right? Because if I were to ask
Pisco,
you,
Pisco, why the fuck didn't you do that last night? Literally, when we're having the discussion, you're some great Socratic teacher, and you couldn't just be like, "Oh, is that the right word? You don't understand." I would have been like, "You know what? You're right. It makes sense because I can't answer it. It's so outlandish." That's how that would have gone.
I'm not your fucking
and it would have saved us
babysitter,
20
dude.
minutes.
I'm not your fucking
You're not-
dad, and
Dude.
you're expected to behave like a fucking adult. And when you say incoherent instead of saying something else, and you're right now we're having a conversation about whether I'm bad faith. I'm not here to fucking baby you. All right, I'm not your stepdad. So why don't we have the actual conversation right now? The reason why this distinction,
What does the stepdad
the reason,
commentary add to this?
No,
all right, guys. But let's again. I understand it's a heated topic, and there is going to be some sort of not ad hoc, but there's going to be some divisiveness here. I would love to stay on the topic here.
All right,
the
so
issue which we're trying to resolve is about the incoherent versus outlandish.
And
So
this
let's
is
stick
why
on
it
that.
matters. And I think Gilmore is correct about this. If I were to ask you an outlandish hypothetical, there are good faith reasons to ask outlandish hypotheticals. And in fact, a lot of really good hypotheticals that test the limits of our principles are outlandish fact patterns. If I were to ask you an incoherent question, that actually would be evidence of bad faith. Because if I'm asking you something that's incomprehensible, right? If I say, answer that, and you're like, well, I don't know what you're talking answer that. That's like an example of bad faith, right? It's an incoherent question. And so that's why it's important for us to, right now, and I'm not going to move from it, cash out what you mean by incoherent. Because if all you mean is outlandish, then it's not an example of bad faith.
The prompt right here includes a claim that you filibuster. This is a great example. Part of the lose scenario for here is you being Pisco, unfortunately. So just like a moth to the flame, you can't resist the urge to drag this out. I don't know how long we've been talking about this for. It sounds fucking retarded. I'll explain. I already gave you, I should have said outlandish, and you're still bitching about it. My counter is, if you were good faith, that's your claim, or at least you're defending that you're good faith. You could have either asked for the clarification or ran with it. If you're going to be so daft about that level of words, then I don't think you're good faith. And then if instead of just taking it, right, like right now you're listening, and I think you're acting fairly good faith right now. I appreciate that. But you give long rants about things that don't matter. That's filibustering. So I'm going to end this point now to the mod. I mean, I'll engage if you still want to keep talking about it.
Well, so this is not an example of bad
more
faith, then, right?
appropriate word choice would-
Because all I asked you
here
was
we go.
outlandish.
I'm literally
finish.
I'm about to fucking be done. And I signal to you, I'm about to be done. And you just can't
Okay,
control
just
it.
finish
can
this,
you?
okay? Yeah.
Okay. The whole point is I'm ready to move past this. Outlandish would have been more appropriate. And I think the fact that you don't try to clarify or find the common ground or actually try to connect with and understand means you're bad faith. Go ahead.
But I'm happy to go for it.
Yeah, just the point of that. So I don't think the dispute here is whether or not it was a correct synonym.
Right.
There's an inherent difference about the term incoherent versus outlandish. You could still answer an outlandish hypothetical, but you can't answer a incoherent hypothetical because you don't understand it. Just like he said, if you're speaking Spanish, you don't understand the question, it's impossible to answer it. So I think that's the holdup here. It's not about synonyms, whether or not it's.
No, I'm happy to grant your usage of the term. And the minute you say, "Oh, what I meant by incoherent is just a ridiculous, outlandish thing to even suppose," and then the I'm going to be like, "Fine, all right, that's what you mean by incoherent."
I said that like 5-10 minutes ago.
No,
I already said I should have said outlandish.
Okay, Grant, you should have, because
and I already agreed.
Okay,
that the incoherent is structurally different than
I'm
outlandish.
not hung up.
And the mod twice has explained the difference between outlandish and incoherent, and I agree. And I don't know why you're still talking about it.
Okay, Streamer. So the issue though is, do you think it's possible to answer an outlandish hypothetical?
Yes.
Do you think it's bad faith to ask someone an outlandish hypothetical?
No, I do not.
Okay, so this is not an example of any bad faith that I did, correct?
Incorrect.
What? So then,
why is that?
In virtue of what was that a bad faith question?
So I'm going to ask a probing question here. Do you think you were remotely confused? So two-part. Were you confused about what I said? Or two, did you try to clarify so you could actually engage with it?
Confused by
so
what?
When I said
I don't know what you're referencing.
When I said that's so incoherent, I can't answer it.
That's not what I got hung up on. I didn't get hung up on that in the debate.
What did you get hung up on?
No, I didn't get hung up on anything when you answered the question. I was just like, come on, answer it. And then you eventually did. You're like, it's so incoherent, or it's so whatever you said. I don't even remember if you used the word incoherent.
Right. So
and you answered it. And I didn't get hung up at all. So it just, I didn't get hung up. You answered it and I accepted your answer. And I was like, that's insane. You're insane. So why was that question bad faith? You answered it. I didn't like dwell on your answer other than to say that guy's insane.
No. So what I don't understand and what is bad faith is I used a word, you disagreed with it. We're all on the same page now about how that was.
No, I didn't get hung up on that word incoherent. Stream Rift. I got your answer is what made me laugh and was ridiculous. Not any particular word you use, but the concept that you were conveying. Right? The concept you were conveying is, even in the situation in which I knew it to be a fact that it was unconstitutional for Trump to take this action, I would still support it. That's what I thought was fucking awful. But I didn't get hung up on word choice there.
Why didn't you engage with that?
What do you mean? I did.
So my version of good faith in discussions is usually, and this is going to sound maybe a little wild, trying to understand other people's perspectives. What really was disappointing about the discussion last night is I actually think you probably have some really interesting commentary you could have made on topics, but you're so busy hung up on all sorts of other shit. You were neither probing anyone else on the panel to really engage and understand. Now, I left after about 2 hours. Maybe it got different when I left. And you didn't even do a good job of explaining where you were. So, for example, you got hung up on the logic chain of, I said, what court should this be heard in? And then you go, well, you think just because it can't enforce it. No, you wouldn't. It was pulling teeth to get you to even give me a tribunal. Then when we got to a tribunal, you wouldn't let Gibbs point out the fact that none of the tribunals you mentioned are unable, literally within their law, to press any charges. And so if they literally don't have a law, there's no tribunal enacted any law that would ever hear this, it can't be illegal because there's not even a court for it. So this is the part we couldn't get to. So if there's no court that would hear it, what should we do about that? And is it moral? It took 90 minutes before we even got to flirting with that. And the host explicitly said, I'd like to talk about the morality of it. So when everyone else on the panel at that point said, that's what we'd like to talk about too, is it not bad faith to derail the entire fucking panel from what everyone else wants to talk about because you want to beat what seems to be a dead horse to death?
Right, so
even
we'll get to that question.
Are we moving off of the question I asked?
Yeah, let me focus on that. Yeah. Keep that in mind, what he said there. So when he asked the question and gave it the yes or no about that, you said the incoherent question, which you now say is just outlandish question. Do you think that question itself was bad faith, or are you saying these later actions is when it twisted over to bad faith?
So I think that the question itself was perfectly fair.
Okay.
That structure of saying, if you think X, just for a second, pretend X isn't true. Let's pretend in that world. That's entirely fair. That's expected, even if we're talking about the bar being a minimum floor.
Sure.
Like a minimum floor is we have to be able to say, well, let's pretend you did like the question. Where it becomes explicitly bad faith and paired with the filibuster is when you don't allow a clarification or engagement with it. And that what I didn't bring up lactoid. When I said that, that's when you brought up lactoid as one example where you did engage in good faith, and I gave you that for free. And if that was how we would have engaged the whole night, that would have been awesome. I wouldn't even think you were bad faith. I will say this discussion is making me rethink whether or not you're categorically bad faith. The other thing is also this is 1v1 with a mod, so we're going to be able to be a little bit more gentlemanly with each other.
Yeah, I think so let's deal with I appreciate what you're saying now. With the conversation that happened, as I understand what you just said, it's not that the question I asked was bad faith, is that I didn't let you elaborate on it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
How did I not let you elaborate on your answer? And to remind the audience, the answer is that yes, you would still be against you'd still be in favor of the action in Venezuela, assuming it to be unconstitutional. How and why did what did I do to not let you expand on that answer?
So my takeaway from last night, to be clear, and what I should have done is not ask you questions. And I'll answer directly your question. The problem isn't that you asked a question; it's that you'd ask a question and then you just run over. And so the one liner is, you're a yapper, so I shouldn't ask you questions. I should just monologue at you with my points until we talk over each other. That's the structure it seems like would work with you, at least the version of you that showed up last night. So I spend a lot of time talking to people. Now, here's a fun fact. About a third of the population's introverts. They need pauses in between exchanges to process and engage with it. So if you actually want to hear what an extrovert or an introvert's thinking, you have to provide pauses. Now, I'm a heavy extrovert. I can overwhelm the introverts most of the time, probably all the time. So what you're doing, it's not the questions that you ask as much as it's essentially, here's the rough format. Maybe you do this subconsciously, whatever. You ask basically a yes, no question, and then ramble more. Yes, no question, ramble more. Not yes, no question, let other side ramble, then ask a question and engage. There's not the rhythm there. That was the problem with it. That's where the filibustering part of the original claim comes in.
But in this specific instance, I thought you said that it was bad faith for me not to let you expand on your answer regarding the outlandish question I asked. And
yeah, you kept talking over literally fucking everyone on the panel. And Wick was being gentle, and I appreciate that. But you were literally, and here's the thing. I hadn't been on a panel with you before. I don't like talking over people. If someone wants to engage in good faith, I expect to not have to raise my voice. And maybe that's a mismatch for the panel.
So is it your claim or is it not your claim that I didn't let you expand on the answer?
Yeah, my claim is you would talk over any response.
Did you try to expand on the answer to that question?
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
And
I think this is a substantive issue that is either right or wrong. So, I mean, unless we have the clips of it, I don't know how we resolve it.
What is there to expand on? You answered a hypothetical, and that was the answer. What additional clarity would you have said if I had let you, as you sit here? What would you have added?
If I had let you, you admit it.
No, on using the assumption that I didn't let you.
You used your language. You didn't say assumption at first. That was a confession, counselor. But assuming, here's the thing.
That's
the
lame.
United States of America. Narrative guy doesn't like getting narratived. I get it.
We'll just get to it, yeah.
To stick to the essence of it. If the Constitution is the founding document of the United States of America, we would say, okay, we're going to learn about how this country's governed and what its legal principles are in the founding documents, which explicitly allow the citizens to overthrow a tyrannical government. And all of those citizens willing to overthrow their own government vote for a president. And all of the powers the president has are enumerated in these documents. And so it is hilarious to me, outlandish even, to presuppose there is something in that interest national security that would be unconstitutional for POTUS to do. And even if it was, the whole premise of whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, the nation was founded on rebellion. And so legal is sort of a bit notional at that point. That's what I would have said, and I'm sure you may or may not have had opinions to it. And it wouldn't have even taken that long. The greatest defense about your bad faith is the fact that listening to the other side would, one, probably give you more material to work with, and two, it would just take less effort on your part.
So this is not really part of the prompt. And if you two guys want to do it, do you want to run through this conversation and see if you can work out the issue and have it in a way that you feel is not bad faith?
Oh, like show it? Like show the...
just run through it, like role play the conversation.
Sure. Let's do it.
So Pisco, you want to start with your yes or no question, and then we'll go from there?
Okay.
I'm throwing a yellow flag right now.
Right,
just a housekeeping thing. I only have about 10 more minutes right now. Okay. Might be able to stick around a little bit longer. I don't want to stop in the middle and have you like, oh, gotcha, whatever.
No, I appreciate
that. So, let's run it. Go ahead, Pisco.
Okay, Mr. Stream Rifts. I know that you think it's illegal, or it's not illegal, but assume that it were illegal under the Constitution for Trump to take this action. Would you still support, even if it were unconstitutional, these strikes?
Absolutely, and let me tell you why. The entire founding documents of our country are based off of rebellion, and our entire populace supports a commander-in-chief to keep us safe. So whatever the commander-in-chief wants to do is backed by literally every friggin' United States citizen that's willing to grab a rifle, go out their front door, and protect the country as they know it. So I can't even imagine if there was some legal some statute, some whatever, and it was unconstitutional, as long as the chief executive officer of the country is enacting what he's trying to do to take to in the pursuit of, if the actions that are being taken are in pursuit of national interests, it's a high bar to clear that I would give a shit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that most of what you just said there has nothing to do with the question I asked. You're basically arguing why it would be acceptable under the Constitution for the president to do anything he thought was in the national interest. That's how I understood it. But are you saying something different?
So I think both. I think
one. That's not the question I asked. I didn't expand your answer there. You're not expanding on your answer. You're just saying why you think it is constitutional, which is an absurd thing.
No,
what you just said. But
even if it was patently unconstitutional, if we let's just, to use an extreme example, possibly even an outlandish example. What if we had an amendment, the 18th Amendment, and it said no president can go arrest a illegitimate leader of a sovereign nation and take over a country, or frame that around. Let's say it names
Maduro.
Fact.
Yeah, there's a new amendment that says the president. It will be unconstitutional for the president to order the arrest of Maduro on this day, and he does it anyway.
Perfect.
Okay, go.
Or this day or any day, even. Well,
okay.
Okay. If he did it anyway, looking at the entire rest of the legal apparatus, I don't think that's enough to make it actionable in any fashion.
That's not the question whether or not it'll be actionable. You realize that, right?
Sure. So your question is, why would I support it? So why don't you go ahead and repeat the exact question?
Yeah. So you just introduced a new term called actionable, and none of my question or your answer relates to whether or not something is actionable. It relates to whether or not it's constitutional or ethical. These are the two.
When did you say ethical?
Yeah, would you still support it? When I said would you support it, that is a reference to your ethical outlook on it, your normative outlook.
Oh. So when you say would you report so to you, if it was unconstitutional, would you support it? Is if it was unlawful, would you think it moral?
Right.
Is that your okay? Right. Aha. So I understand the question better. I would still support it because I believe it was supporting U.S. interests. And I think that there's no injury I'm seeing that's immoral.
Well, most people, I understand that that's what your answer is in terms of why you don't care about the violation of the Constitution there, is because you only care about, so what I'm hearing from you is you only care about constitutional violations where there's like an injury that you care about, right?
No, well, because what we did here is we injected the hypothetical that as a starting point, something that is ambiguous was crossing a black line. We said there's a new law, you can't arrest Maduro, right?
Yeah.
And I let you argue that as the foundation. I said, even if that's what it was, everything else around it says you can still do it. But I wouldn't see it as immoral because laws are not inherently don't inherently pay allegiance to morality, right? The lazy example is the Holocaust was legal,
Yeah,
slavery was legal.
I
You can
agree
look
with
at all these
that.
other
I
stupid
agree with that.
examples.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So why should it being unconstitutional? So, for example, in this specific instance, the at least one part of the greater claim is we have a country that cannot take care of its people in terms of it can't prevent them from shipping drugs to the US where Americans are dying. And America doesn't like that. So if there is a rogue nation out there that is incapable of keeping its citizens from causing harm to the US, and we've been attempting to use diplomatic channels, why should I be bothered when the president of the United States of America uses military force to protect American citizens? I don't think that's immoral.
Assuming it were unconstitutional. That's the question.
Even if it was
We're here.
unconstitutional,
Right. That's what we're examining
I
right
don't
now.
know how it's immoral.
Right. So the reason why I asked the legal question is for most Americans, they value as a starting assumption under their ethical framework the maintenance of the Constitution because for whatever reason, either because they think it has inherent value, I don't think that's true, or because they think it has some sort of consequential value, which I do think is true. That is to say, it is the framework by which we, in the long term, will have good results for people and will do more of what we ought do and less of what we ought not do. So people will have as a starting assumption, Americans, violations of the Constitution bad, shouldn't happen. Now, that doesn't mean that every hypothetical violation of the Constitution we would say is something that is bad. I would agree that I can think of violations of the Constitution. Thank you for the raid, Hutch, very much. We're having a conversation about good faith, bad faith, and Venezuela issues. I'm not going to sit here and say that every violation, hypothetical violation of the Constitution is therefore bad under the U.S. Constitution. But most people, when I'm trying to appeal to their ethical systems, will have to be giving them a moral issue of the utmost concern, a civilizational, existential issue, before they would consider saying something like, yeah, it doesn't really matter that you violated the U.S. Constitution here. Something like, oh, the destruction of the republic itself, something like, nuclear bombs going off, something like some sort of like major threat. Yeah.
What do you, so I'm not asking you what Daddy Trump thinks or like what to agree with Daddy Trump. But Daddy Trump and the administration that authorized all of this and the people that support them, what do you think is their argument for why this would make a lot of sense and why this was a good thing that we should accept and condone? Or maybe not all the way on that.
I'm not sure why that's relevant to the prompt. Can you explain why it's relevant to the prompt? Oh, I'm happy to answer it, but is it? Do you want to move off the prompt?
Right.
About
So you're
bad faith?
derailing right now. It seemed like we had derailed. We were.
Well, I think we need a new prompt, not the filibustering and Gish Gallop prompt, because I think we're off of that in trying to roll.
Yeah, I don't think that
Yeah.
you've established that at all. That I filibuster or do any of
But
that stuff.
that's kind of besides the point now.
Okay.
So let's focus on the issue here. Yeah.
So do you want to now have a conversation about Venezuela?
That was the conversation that we had transitioned.
I know that.
to.
I'm at okay. So all right.
So yes.
All right. Cool. So I think that they have different stated reasons. And then I think that there's like underlying real reasons, and they're multiple.
Could you just give me like a giant theme?
Yeah.
Like just a quick lazy synapse.
Wait, Riff, do
shorthand.
you want their stated reason or what you think their actual reason is for it?
Any reason? Both would be nice
Okay, I'll
if they
do
were
both.
maybe 1-2
Yeah.
sentences each, not
Yeah.
5 minutes each.
So their stated reason relates to law enforcement apprehension. That's their stated legal reason, and that the military action is like adjacent to that. Is in the military action, in other words, is used as part of the exercise of law enforcement authority. And so that's their reason is we're arresting him because he is a narco terrorist who also conspired to possess machine guns. That's their stated reason. Or at least their official reason given. They have other stated reasons though beyond that, which relate to this is Trump and others of surrogates talking about it. Ending communism and authoritarianism in Venezuela, in benefiting the Venezuelan people, in extracting oil from Venezuela, and from curbing. Go ahead, sorry.
Do you know what the weirdest thing about sort of the pushback on this to me is that the administration's already seized an oil tanker and has already said we're taking oil. And the biggest criticisms about the Middle East wars was that it was a pretext for oil. Here, I think where Venezuela really messed up is when the US starts targeting publicly and carpet bombing the media with, we've got these drug terrorists that are killing Americans. We're going to have to do something. Oh, everybody grabs their red, white, and blue and says, let's bomb the shit out of them. And if you have an IQ above room temperature and you've been around for more than a couple of decades watching this, you can tell this is what they're posturing for. And so the thing is, they had to sell the morality of this on the American people. And when they, let me ask you this, when they were doing the,
wait, do you take issue with what I just said? I don't understand what you just said. Have you taken issue with anything I just said?
have I taken issue with anything you just said?
Because you phrase that as though we're like a rebuttal to something, and anyone at the room IQ would know this. And so I'm just not understanding. Are you like disagreeing with the things I just said, or do you even remember what I said?
Well, I'm setting up because the question to you was in a couple of sentences, and you went off a bit. And that's fine. That's fine. Far more brief than usual. You said there's the stated reason of, well, we've got he's a terrorist trying to get guns, whatever. Okay. And then you said, and then we're going to fight communism and socialism, and then you said oil,
help the people and extract oil.
Oh, yes, help the people. Yeah,
that's a stated reason. That's one of the stated reasons.
Yep, and I'm not even pushing back on that.
Okay, so you don't disagree with anything.
What I'm saying? No, I don't.
Okay, cool.
I'm running on it because I'm good faith. Usually, okay. I try to be. The part of the criticism when Colin Powell went to the UN and said weapons of mass destruction was the American people got sold on the idea we have to go bomb the shit out of the Middle East or else we're all going to die. And I was in high school, 9/11, 2001. And I remember very vividly how the country felt at the time. So when I'm seeing these strikes come out here, I say, we're about to do this. What's strange is they're not even hiding that we want the oil. And so I don't understand what the pushback is on these of like, because it seems like they're not hiding anything about what they're doing. Let me ask you this. Do you think there's some hidden agenda that they're not owning up to?
Yes.
If they're already saying we're there for oil, what is that?
Yeah. So I think one other agenda that they have that they're not stating is a geopolitical one, but it also relates to corruption. And this is that what's going on. America is self-sufficient in terms of energy production. It's not like the extraction of the oil, and really it's less about the extraction of the oil so much as the ownership of the oil is done with an eye towards like lowering energy prices. I don't think that's what's going on. And I don't think that Trump has a desire to lower energy prices. I think he's like in bed with these Saudi and Qatari like lords and kingdom and all that stuff, right? And I think he has a vested interest to from a geopolitical stance, push on China and pressure China. China has a great need for oil. A lot of the exports from Venezuela go to China. And so there's a lot of people in the sort of international room, so to speak, of the Trump administration who want to shift to China. And Biden want to do that a little bit as well. And I think that this is also part of keeping oil prices where they are, having control within a sphere of which includes the Saudis in America, and preventing, Venezuela from lowering prices significantly, things like that. So I think that there is a hidden agenda. It relates to enriching Americans, enriching the oil lords of the Middle East, and curbing China influence.
So thank you for sharing that. And this is how I wish the flow of at least this most recent part here where we've been chatting. I wish this had been more of what we had last night. So I do still have to go. I went a little over. Apologize on that. But Pisco, a few things, if I may. One, thanks for having this chat. It's always nice to actually be able to engage with people. Panel dynamics can be goofy, and Admiral Gibbs will never shut up. And he's got some really strong opinions. So all that to say, I'm glad we could do some one-on-one here. I think we have a better framework of how to communicate with each other. So if we want to do more debates beyond panels, I think we could have a lot more productive discussions. And I stand by my claim that the way that you filibuster and Gish Gallop is bad faith, but you haven't been anywhere near that way with me this go of it.
And to be
appreciate
clear, you didn't point to
Go
a
ahead.
single example of that in the conversations, the ones that we've gone through. That is to say, the lactoid example, you said that was good faith. You said, so just to be clear, the one about the question, asking the question itself, you said that was fine and not bad faith at all. And then you weren't meaningfully willing to engage on the notion that I prevented you. I just want to finish that I prevented you from elaborating further. No, I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
every single example you gave,
literally, you give monologues, and then so here's what I think it is. I should have just talked over you more, because at least in this chat, it's worked better. You give a context, you ask a yes/no question, you get a yes/no answer, and you go. That's the filibuster aspect of it.
I'm summarizing that you failed. You fundamentally failed to provide any single example of me gish galloping or filibustering for the purpose of whatever. You were off to the races on your 3 examples, whatever. Each one of them, you acknowledge, I guess that's not bad faith. That's just where we're at.
So my third party perspective on this is I don't think we went, it's possible, he was being bad faith. I'm not going one way or the other there. I don't think we got enough into this conversation to even evaluate it one way or the other. I thought it was gonna be a longer conversation, so unfortunately we didn't get to the kind of the merits of it. And then at the end we kind of had the quote unquote good faith conversation to show that, it's possible to have the conversation in good faith. So I think to justify the prompt, we'd have to have a longer conversation to even get into the merits of it. I don't think it was proven during this conversation,
or disproven, I guess.
Right, one way or the other. I don't think it was.
That's a good faith. You're ending on good faith. Pisco, you just about. I was like, I say all these nice things about him, and then you throw more good faith. Yes, it wasn't proven or disproven. I hear your position. I think I very clearly have made the claim. You provide context, ask a yes/no question, then talk over the response to it as if you're pretending to hand the mic to somebody. That's the gish gallop is the rambling, and then the filibuster is not letting. But that's the claim.
If you have 1 minute, I'd like to give my support for my position, which is that's not true. First, I am myself, and I am the person, and I am the So I want to give my position for why the prompt here is not true. I'm myself. I know my intentions more than anyone else, and I'm testifying right now before everybody that I don't have the intent to bog down conversations or to get rid of central points by just going on and on and on things that don't matter. So 1, my testimony. I'm telling you I don't do it. 2, I don't have a reputation for that. I have a reputation oftentimes for other bad things that are like the opposite of it. And 3, you can't point to any single example of me doing that. And I'm willing to spend hours and hours and hours and hours going to central points and open conversations basically to anyone on anything to bring people in to talk those points. And that is the kind of person who isn't afraid of dealing with central issues. In fact, my very presence here to discuss this issue, I think, is evidence of my good faith in the fact that I don't have a tendency to do that. And so all of those things are true. They are in fact true. And they show that I don't do that. That's my affirmative case. And so now that I've had the space to do that, I think I have proven that it's not true. So we can know that.
So you're going to be debating Ryan Mullally at World Debate Con, yeah?
It's called Word Debate, not World Debate Con, but yes.
Word Debate. My bad. Look, I'm in Vegas. There's all these cons and debates and warring and hyping each other up. Anyway, Ryan's a cool cat. I thought it was neat that you two would be on that show. So good luck out there.
Appreciate that.
Wait, Streamer, can I ask you one more question just to
fucking mods? Yeah, of course.
It's very quick. So you brought up one thing that I found interesting about, you seem to think that the question that Pisco asked you today about whether or not it was ethical that wasn't what you viewed the question as last night. So what did you think Pisco's question was last night? If not, what was your ethical view of the attack or invasion, however you want to phrase it?
So to me, it's not obvious that supporting something means it's ethical. For example, I think there's any number of internal contradictions humans have. So saying I'd support something is not to me identical as saying, is it moral or is it ethical? But it sounds like that was the placeholder for it. And honestly, that's where a lot of the misalignment happened on sort of.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But in that context is the question. Did you think I was saying support by which we mean like you might support an unethical thing? I agree that that's a coherent notion that you could support something that you believe is unethical. It's just your official stance. But did you understand me to be asking what your official stance would be or what you thought would be right when I asked that question?
I did not understand you to be asking an ethical question.
Okay.
I understood you to be asking if I would support it, which to me is a separate question.
Just like what your official stance
would be. This is a part of what This is a part of why exactly right. What would your stance be whether you are internally consistent on ethics or not? And that's where the Socratic method comes in handy, because if you probe out, you can find this stuff out, and then But no, that was real eye opener. Mod, do you have any other questions before
That's
I
all
go?
I had. I appreciate that.
Hey,
I don't
appreciate
hold you
you
up.
both.
Thank you,
Have
man.
a good one.
Later.
Thank you.
Oh
Pisco, can I ask you a
my,
question, actually?
yeah, go for it.
All right, so I think it was more about other people giving their positive claims and you kind of interrogating it.
Mhm.
From what I heard last night, I didn't hear the whole conversation, so I apologize.
Yeah.
What is your threshold, if you have one, for when it would be moral to act in violation of the U.S. domestic law, the Constitution, whoever it may be, in relation to a foreign invasion like this one?
Oh, in relation to a foreign invasion?
Yeah.
One which is existential in its nature, one which threatens the very existence and then it's going to be like some threshold of percentage chance or something there. But something which has a significant chance at threatening the very existence of our country or republic. And if I thought something like, oh, it's a 5% chance America will go away, you could probably get me there.
So, like, let's say Pearl Harbor's bombed.
Yeah, not existential.
There may be more attacks. Not enough to you. Okay.
No. The only one I think that's possible is like civil war. Right now, as I sit here and think civil war, and maybe in light of some threats that where you could actually, and you'd have to show that the response, I would have to have an intuition that the response is tailored to address that threat and would actually lower the chance some significant amount. So it's not enough to say, well, the Soviets had nukes aimed at us, and that was existential, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that the individual actions taken is a sufficient like nexus to preventing that sort of the breakout of the war there. But it is a high threshold.
I'm assuming in this that it would be successful. It would work perfectly. There's no debate whether or not the response would be a good thing for the United States.
So okay. it would deal with both the tendency of the action to, if successful, lower the risk, the existential threat, which is already there, and then its likelihood of success as well. And like that, we're just not close to that. I think the Civil War is maybe like one context in which that would exist. Maybe some other like founding era stuff, War of 1812 or some shit. There it's, and I think most people would have that intuition. Like if the Constitution, if anything, is like was designed to endure, and if there really is some absolutely, strictly speaking, necessary action to preserve the Union, that those are the cases in which I would be okay. Or if the human cost is like an unparalleled scale, if we're talking some crazy scale, I would be okay with it.
Okay, so like 5 million Americans might die if you don't take action.
No,
that's enough to really. Okay,
unfortunate, but yeah, I mean that's true of like COVID shit and certain diseases.
No, of course, yeah. All right, I appreciate that.
All right, appreciate you. And do you have anything else?
I think that's all I had. I had some questions about the lawsuits, but I'll hold back. I'm kidding, but I appreciate your time and hope this conversation was better than last night's.
I don't know, man. This is the kind of shit that just whenever people are like, oh, you do this kind of shit in debates. Oh, thank you so much, Prague Pro, for the raid. Appreciate you. In debates, I try to get to the specifics, and it's always this kind of like bullshit. This was true also of like the discussions that I had with Hutch and this or that. Like we get to the actual thing, and I'm like, I don't think that you can provide a prescription for this instance, what I should have done there, other than like people feel kind of bad that I take a position or that I ask things in the Socratic, or I guess not Socratic way. What do you think of the Socratic back and forth?
Yeah, so I think people don't like. I mean, I'm a lawyer also. I think people don't like being quote unquote deposed. They don't like being asked questions where you kind of. I'm not saying that there's a way to ask people yes or no questions in bad faith. It happens all the time. Yeah. It happens during most depositions, I would say. So I think there is a way of getting to into your like a lawyer brain where you're just asking yes or no questions to go down kind of a path that you want to bring them down, which could be in good faith, could be in bad faith. I'm not saying that you were acting in bad faith that way. So I think people don't like being put on the spot answering yes or no questions like that, especially when it comes to a point of contention which might look bad for them. So like in this example, it might look bad to say, hey, it'd be a good thing to violate the U.S. Constitution because it would be some greater good for the United States, which is what his stance is on this topic. So I think that's why people don't like being put on the spot. It's more of a form thing than a substance thing that people say adds to that. And I think that just might be, hey, I'm not giving advice here. I think that's people may act defensively and then after the fact act like you're acting in bad faith there.
Well, I appreciate the input, Gilmore, and let's Did you guys? We'll do the podcast at some point. But thank you so much for doing the moderation.
I appreciate that.
All right.
We'll talk soon.
Later, bye.
Have a good night.
This motherfucker. There's someone in disagreements. Ice Beans. Yo, what up, Ice Beans? How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing well. How can I help you this wonderful Sunday night?
Okay, I just to put my own two cents in here. It's nothing crazy. I'm not. I honestly think expecting more than a standard amount of good faith in a panel is just garbage. I feel like, especially if you're familiar with Twitch Bowl at all, you know what panels are like. You know you're probably going to get a more productive conversation when it's like a one-on-one, like an after the panel kind of deal. So, I mean, I think that you do a pretty good job of like trying to be good faith during a panel scene. And then I've seen you be quote unquote good faith in these one-on-one conversations. So I'm not sure what people are kind of expecting out of you.
I appreciate that, Ice Beans.
Yeah.
Where's the butt? I feel it coming. I feel the butt.
No. There's no butt. Okay. Really, if there is a butt, I'd want you to I'd want you to take off the safety, as it were. More so.
You're one of those people.
Like, well, yeah. Like yesterday was pretty okay. So especially okay. I don't know about this streamer guy. Okay, I don't know about it. Against someone like Gibbs, you want the safety off. Like, absolutely, right? Like,
so you don't have a problem that I called him a drunk or said that he was like stammering like a drunk or something?
It more so like well, I mean, that's kind of up to you as to how far you want to go with it. You know what I mean? But like, just the more what we call debate bro tactics, right? Okay. Because we all know, everyone knows, like debates like this, like panels like that, it's all optics, right? You're getting in, you're preventing the bag of hot air from spewing hot air. Yeah. That's really kind of what it is, right?
That's what I feel I'm doing. Especially with like Gibbs there. There was a moment in time where it's like, I really think that he didn't know where he was going. And I get that feeling a lot of the times with certain people who I talk to. Like, this person started the sentence and doesn't know or have a plan, how to land the plane.
Yeah. No, and it's funny. It's actually very funny because you called him drunk and he was like, "Yep, caught." Like,
I think he said he wasn't. Or
no,
did I miss that?
No. He. I mean, no. His face said it. Like, he said it, and then he said, "Yeah," and then he said something about not being drunk. But it was pretty funny, like the way he reacted when you said it. If you go back and watch, but in any case, the other thing that I wanted to ask. And this is kind of off the wall.
Yeah.
I made this again kind of off the wall. I made this emote for Wick a long time ago when he went unhinged on Mix Vivian Wolf. Feels like years ago. And I feel like, and I've been very annoyed that he's never added it.
What the fuck?
I made you, yeah, I made it for him. If I made you a dark Pisco emote, would you add it to your emotes?
I would for Twitch. YouTube, I'm capped right now because I don't have enough members.
No, you're fine. I don't care.
But for Twitch, I don't.
Yeah, okay, all right. Just wanted to check before I even did it.
And fuck you, Wick. Where's Wick? I saw him in chat before. This motherfucker gets a free emote and he doesn't use it. It's kind of crazy.
Well, to be fair, Wick is notoriously bad at doing anything for his stream. I went on, there was one point in time where I told him that I dared him to add the salute, like Elon's salute back when that happened, because he was so adamant on saying that it wasn't a Nazi salute.
He's one of those people.
And
here's what they say.
He was one of those people.
They say like, "Oh, it wasn't a proper Roman salute because all the fucking shit."
Yeah, but anyways, that's all I had. I mean, keep doing what you're doing. Really, like it honestly, my preferred way to have a conversation would almost be where it's like a two-parter, where you have like, the panel, all the feelings come out, blah, blah, blah. You lay out some points, but then afterwards you have a more like coherent, quieter, less people,
Yeah, it's a
and
lot
maybe
easier
you're
when it's
able
one on
to.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but also I think the two part is important because it lets everyone like step back, actually digest some of those points, and then we can come back and, like someone in your chat was saying, they went back and checked the VOD of like the one point where he said that you were being bad faith and like it wasn't, it was a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Or and it's fine, it people misremember stuff, but that's why having a follow-up is going to be better, right?
Oh, I
Even
really
if
much agree with that. Yeah, especially when you have the time to like go and get the specific clips, and just to see if people
yeah,
like still agree with the original claim. Yeah, I think the follow up is great.
yeah. But anyways, I'll leave you to your night. Have a good one.
Thank you. And look, you shout out your stream. So Ice Beans, right, on Twitch? Is it just spelled
Yeah,
regular?
yeah, ice beans. Well, ice underscore beans, but
Ice underscore
yeah.
beans. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Okay.
All right,
All right.
see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. It's just us now. Han Solo can't save you. Let me think of shit. So this is my perspective on the conversation. I think it's a joke. I think these people are laughable. This whatever Rift guy. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with my feelings on him. I think he's a pseudo intellectual. I think that he is totally out of his depth on so many of these different things. There's so much. If people knew how much like I was catching of their bullshit that I'm just like letting slide, and just like how fundamentally confused I think that a lot of these people are, they would like maybe get a sense of how good faith I feel I am to like let so much go by without commenting on it. Because like everything there that in every opportunity he had to like talk about the Venezuela stuff, it's some crazy stupid shit like, oh, we're all born as part of a country that rebelled, and so therefore the president can do whatever he wants as long as he thinks it's in the interest of the nation under my ethical system or some shit or whatever. That is just like so many layers of stupidity to it. And then it's not just being dumb, low IQ, not having a sense of what's going on, but also being chicken shit. Like you come in here with a strong claim. The strong claim is that I like do this filibustering shit or whatever to not get to the core point. And every single example that we have of you trying to claim that is debunked by yourself, where you're like, oh, I guess that, no, I brought that up because that was an example of your good faith. I was giving you that one for free. What does that mean? You came with a claim and you gave me something that is counter to your claim for free to show that you're good faith or something. Like, how about you don't waste our time with things that don't prove your point and that prove the opposite of your point, and you just bring up things that prove your point, right? It reminds me, I'm sorry to keep referencing it, it's just all like a lot of the conversations I had over about the Ethan stuff, where we're debating the difference between Asmongold's react and Denham's, and it's like, well, her reaction was longer than Asmongold's. Okay, I know that. I wanted a sort of a difference that hews to Asmongold's favor, not to his detriment, right? Like I'm asking you for the opposite of what you just gave me. You said I was bad faith, and you gave me an example of good faith. Does it ever worry your primary source of revenue is Doobie and someone who overtly hates you? I don't think that A, Doobie is my primary source of revenue. B, does it bother me that someone who hates me gives me money? Not sure I have thoughts on that. I think if someone hates you and gives you money, should I feel bad about that? Like, I hate certain stores, but I go buy shit from them sometimes. Yeah. What else did we have to say? Oh, let me just talk a little bit about the Venezuela stuff in general. It's so disappointing. I say I'm disappointed, but like I kind of expected this bullshit. But to see people like predictably, and even Democrats and even the leaders of our party, just give the most bullshit statements on this, either outright support for some of them, or these kind of like, we are very concerned. I almost respect it more for the EU countries and like Ukraine and stuff, because Trump actually does have them a little bit by the balls in all these trade deals and all this different stuff. He can make it hurt for these countries. And so, it's in some respect, like I almost respect it more for the EU out of US, where there's like a lot of potential downsides for that country if they like talk all that shit. But internal, I still think they shouldn't do it. I still think they should stand tall and be against it, right? If they have any principles whatsoever. And these kinds of like indirect, like, we don't like this, I still think it's bullshit. But put that aside. For the Democrats, whose whole job it is to oppose Trump, that's what I view the job as being the alternative, as restoring the soul of our country, the way Biden, started to. I just couldn't be more disappointed. It's shitty. Some people had good statements. I think Ruben Gallego had a great statement. I think there are some Democrats who are really showing themselves to be made for the moment in some respects. And Gallego has done stuff that I don't agree with, but that I think was a good moment. Why? Let's start first with like the criticism that you should not accept. If you're one of these people who thinks it's good for America by force to supplant Maduro, you think that that's a good action, but you're concerned about the legality of it, don't be cowed by these fucking losers saying, "Oh, it's just a procedural issue. It's just a hang up on procedure. Who cares?" No, these are important structural concerns of our country, right? Presumably, we're against Maduro staying in power because, among other things, he's a dictator who doesn't care about the rule of law, etc. And so, how do we do ourselves any benefit or show how our system is better in being a contrast to Maduro if we say we don't care when our leaders, so-called leaders, break the rule of law, don't adhere to norms, don't adhere to the, especially like the law itself and the Constitution? And on what basis do we have to like complain about other dictatorships if we're just like going down into that depravity? We have to like stay true. So it's not just a procedural issue. It's structural. It gets to the heart of our democracy. It's like all of these. It's like, suppose that there was a policy that you really, really wanted and some dictator just puts it in, ignoring the Congress. One, there's the argument that the more power you give in that respect, it's going to be harder to take it away. That's the slippery slope one. But even just there, we want our elected officials to comport themselves with like the Constitution that they're sworn to uphold and protect. Okay? So it's not just a mere proceduralism. And this is even just putting aside the issue of international law. Put that aside. You don't even have to adhere to international law if you take that view. But even if you agree with military intervention, and even if you agree with what I just said regarding the proceduralism of it and it not just being a mere procedure issue, you don't have to agree with the intervention that we are actually witnessing. This is what I mean. Deposing someone for the wrong reason. Let's say that it is an action that is likely to have the effect that all the interventionists want it to have. Then I can understand, okay, the bad motive is overwhelmed by the good results. And don't let a bad motive from a couple actors impact the overall good result that will be achieved. But that's just the wrong approach to take. You don't act as though the motive is separate from the results when you're ex ante, when you're before the thing is finished, before there's any kind of like underlying result in the country, which ostensibly is what all the interventionists are saying. It's for the benefit of the Venezuelan people, the benefit of the Venezuelan people. By the way, all the same people who are like anti-asylum from these very same regimes. Thank you so much, Grassroots Hegemon, for the super chat. Thank you. Also, someone else gave some. Did you see Schumer not only declined to use shutdown to leverage against action in Venezuela, but is apparently not planning to shut down? Doesn't surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me at all. Anyway, the motive and intention behind the people doing the action from an ex-ante perspective, before the democracy has been created in Venezuela, which again, humanitarian reasons, democracy reasons, that's what a lot of these interventionists are saying. Very few of them, I think. Thank you so much. A curse upon you, your family, your dog, your hairline. Happy New Year. Thank you, Doobie. Appreciate your donations. I condemn you. The motive and intent behind the action is going to play into our intuitions about what will actually occur, right? If you know someone's object, what they are consciously trying to get to, where they're trying to go to, that informs you about what's likely to come next. It affects your judgment about what's likely. As an example, if we know that what Trump cares about is curbing China influence and Chinese energy policy, via Venezuela, if we think that this is to increase the amount of flow of rents to Saudi Arabia, America, etc., if we think this is about corruption or distractions from domestic issues, then we're going to think that the likelihood of the good outcome is less, because if they're not trying to do the good outcome, they're not going to put in the requisite amount of things, requisite amount of actions needed to get to that outcome, presuming that is the goal. Now, someone who has as their goal humanitarian impulse, creation of democracy, spreading of democracy, that person is going to be much more apt to actually create it if that's their goal, with the full force of the American government behind it. And so that's why these are not hermetically sealed things. From the perspective of before the action is taken, you do take into consideration the motives of the government in assessing whether or not it's likely for something good to happen as a result of this intervention. Likewise, credibility matters. If you can't believe the government when it makes certain claims about the state of affairs between the two countries, about who they're supporting, etc., then you're less likely to be able to make the kind of deference decisions that would be necessary to justify this action. So these are all things that are relevant, right? All relevant to the issue here. From my perspective, if it's illegal under U.S. law, that's enough to know that I'm going to be against it. I don't support the American, unless you can show me some existential, like this is necessary to prevent some existential risk, which this isn't, all right? And no one can credibly say that this is that thing. If for any reason other than like Trump pardoned the other massive, alleged, right, massive drug conspirator, this former Honduran president, I think his name is, is it Juan something? Jeez, I used to know it. Former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, yeah. So it being illegal under U.S. law is enough for me to be against it. But even if it were legal under U.S. law, I would be against it. One is because international law has some perches on me. I think that sovereignty as a goal, now there are things that can overcome sovereignty, right? And where intervention is justified. But I think those are good goals to promote stability, regional stability, et cetera, et cetera. Soft power, these kinds of things, it matters to me. So I'm going to have some sort of showing of good reason to overcome my adherence to international law principles. In other words, I'm going to shift the burden from someone proposing to take some action in violation of those rules to show the case about why those rules should not be enforced in any given instance. Because I think that in general, they make sense. Or at least the ones at issue here make sense. And then ultimately, let me give you guys what you want. If I knew enhanced extradition, right, and this is just a way of using terminology to hide what's happening. It's a euphemism very, very similar to what Russia did in their special military operation. And it's, oh, this isn't a war. It is a law enforcement operation. How can it be a war? Well, the Constitution isn't just meant to be like a labeling document. It's to actually cabin and limit substantive powers, not just what you call them. So call it what you like. It's a war. It's an act of war. Now, is the war over? I don't know. War can occur in a day, though. It can. Conceptually possible. Invasion can happen in a day. And what we saw, I think no doubt, definitionally, was a war. Whether it's continuing, who knows? The motivations and intentions of the Trump administration are relevant to why I think this is unsuccessful. It's not just the track record of regime change in recent years. All else equal, I think it would be easier to do regime change and spreading of democracy in Venezuela than it was in Iraq for a bunch of reasons. There are models that exist in Latin America that I think have a stronger, historical pedigree. Maybe not in Venezuela itself, though it has had, different failed attempts at democracy in the past. There, I think, is more of a shared, the neighbors of of Venezuela as well have had these experiments, and they're not perfect. A lot of these Latin American democracies, Peru, Colombia, these places aren't perfect. They have corruption, etc. But there's a model that is more well known to the people. There's a notion of nation. There's a concept of nation that is present, which isn't as present in Afghanistan, places like this. So there are ways in which I think that you can make the spreading of democracy argument stronger for Venezuela. And I'm not just relying on recent histories of regime change wars to say that I think this is likely to be unsuccessful. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope it's the case that democracy flourishes in this environment and that we have great humanitarian results. That is indeed my hope, my most fervent wish. I hate Maduro. I don't like Maduro. I don't like these tanky style populist left-wing governments that have emerged in Latin America. Maduro is not the only one. I'm not a fan of the Cuban government that existed. I'm not a fan of what Pedro Castillo tried to do in Peru, to say nothing of the Argentinian Peronists type people, So I'm not a big fan of those style governments, and certainly Venezuela, Chavismo, that kind of stuff is not something I support. So I do fervently hope that the people of Venezuela have good results and democracy. That's one of the reasons why I supported asylum cases for Venezuelans fleeing Maduro. Think about that. That makes sense. Oh, I support good results for these people. Hence, we should protect the people who are fleeing persecution from Venezuela. Makes all the sense in the world. Makes all the sense in the world. Some reasons why I think, in addition to the recent sordid past with regime change wars, in addition to the broken promises of the Trump administration vis-a-vis no new wars, et cetera, put all that stuff to the side. Just take this case by itself. What tangible actions has the Trump administration taken to promote democracy in Venezuela with this strike? What have they done in addition to it? They've removed Maduro. Have they backed an opposition candidate? No. In fact, Trump shat on Machado and basically said she didn't have the support. She didn't have the respect she needed, even though she's a nice woman. So that doesn't, okay, you're not willing to back the opposition. You haven't stated that you support the rightful winner of the most recent election that happened in Venezuela. And you're not calling for new elections. You're not calling for institutional change in Venezuela. They're working with the remnants of the Maduro government. At least in some way, it seems. All accounts seem to be that they're engaged with the remnants of Maduro's government, and perhaps even that someone sold out Maduro from within the government. Now, you guys tell me, do you think that members of Maduro's inner circle and those who are now in control in the military, they're going to be committed to liberalization and decommunization? Why would we think that? Why would we think that the military, the Venezuelan military, who was essential to Maduro stealing the elections that he rigged, would now all of a sudden promote democracy and decommunization in the country, absent some leader supported by the United States that is committed to that? So I think that people who are claiming this is likely to lead to that result, they have the burden to show that. Chavez gets out of power. He dies of cancer when? 2011? When does Chavez die? 2013. Chavez dies in 2013. Then you have Maduro. These guys, yeah, was Chavez very charismatic and different in that sense than Maduro? Yeah, I mean, if you hear Chavez speak, he's very charismatic. And Maduro probably a little less so, maybe significantly less so. So I'm not saying they're all immediately replaceable, but what's the evidence, in fact, that removing the leader, when you keep all the other apparatuses in there is going to change the regime and not go into the hands of someone worse, and thus lead to more bad results for the country. Here's another thing that can produce bad results: uncertainty. So, say for example, what happens is we're just changing who is atop the Venezuelan state, but fundamentally, Maduro's government remains intact, absent Maduro, sans Maduro. Now, the people of Venezuela might be happy that Maduro is gone, and when no significant change happens in their day-to-day, what's a possible result? Discontent, anger within Venezuela, which there has been in recent. There've been, all sorts of protests and shit, which have been brutally put down, etc. But in this case, right, you have potentially, right, Venezuelans hoping for a new change, and what if that gets spurned? And what do they think? Now is the time. Now is the time. We're really going to put it in. We're going to do what we're going to do, and we have America on our side, and America doesn't come. That's potentially my concern for internal civil war, power vacuums, when there's uncertainty, when there's an expectation, and when that expectation includes actions, concrete actions by America, and when America has an incoherent, or I should say, an incomplete, or not that, I should be careful, coherent, that the pieces aren't coming together. They haven't given a holistic theory of the mission. It's inconsistent rationales on one side versus the other. Rubio's coming out and like kind of contradicting what Trump said about running the government. Who's in charge? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts here. I think that anybody who claims that this action is likely to cause a given result, the burden of proof is on them to show it. And absent that, I think that there's no problem in, at a bare minimum, adhering to U.S. law, which I think has been violated, as a default presumption, adhering to international law, and C, thinking about the motivations of the people who are instituting this policy, which are bad, and our recent misadventures in regime change as a kind of assumption, as a kind of rule that needs to be overcome by some additional burden of proof. And that's kind of my overall take, so to speak. I think that a lot of this will come into focus. Hopefully we will have some additional clarity in the coming weeks, but I'm disappointed that more Democrats, or at least the leadership of the Democrats, aren't unified in an opposition to the conduct. Not just we need more clarity. We need to be informed, and whatever. This is reckless. This is an action which we don't agree with. Okay, I'm moving some people in for disagreements. It won't be too long tonight, but I always say that. Yo, what up, Acheron?
Hello.
Hello, how you doing? Say something? Oh, wait, you just got destroyed. Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, I
How
can
can I
hear
help
you. Hey, dude. So I had a specific contention about your the way you came off in the panel last night, and specifically in your conversation with Connor, the first one,
Mhm.
regarding immigration. So I
With
wanted
Connor,
to ask you
with Connor? Wasn't yesterday.
counterpoint. Yeah. It wasn't the second conversation; it was the first one that you had about. It was a broad topic about immigration law.
You're saying two convos. You want to talk about that convo and yesterday, right?
Those were the two ones.
cool.
I noticed that you, the way you engaged was slightly different than the way you usually engage.
All right, hit me.
Yeah. So basically, the way I understand the way you usually engage is you have a bit of a pedantic style, but I personally like that, and I think it's necessary to clear up misunderstandings. especially when we were talking about words that might have different meanings, the way different people understand the same word.
Mhm.
So I think you do a very good job at that, and especially like for the past months, ever since I've been watching you, I think you do a fantastic job at applying it appropriately. But I feel like ever since that whole you getting berated by the Ethan Klein bullshit, I feel like you've kind of it almost feels like you got fed up with the entire thing, and you sort of labeled it as you going big boy mode. And ever since then, I feel like I'm specifically focusing on the first conversation with Connor
Mhm.
and with the panel tonight. I feel like you came off as more bad faith than you usually do. And I don't know if you were trying to be bad faith. I usually perceive you as being very good faith.
Mhm.
But in those two conversations, I did notice a change. So, first of all, I want to ask you, do you feel that you have. Did you feel differently when having those conversations than usual?
Um, I don't know. Depends. I've always had very different kinds of conversations, and so I'm. I've always had kind of like certain conversations where I'm angrier or less patient, and so in terms of my normal set of uh styles that I deploy, I don't think it's that far off. Where I've indicated that I'm going to be less patient is specifically on the Ethan conversation. But we didn't talk about that really in the Connor conversation nor in the previous panel. So I think if you've watched me jump on a panel before, um, there are absolutely times in which I'm not patient. So the answer to your question is no, I don't think that things have changed, except for I'm stating that I'm going to be less patient and less sort of kid gloves and walking people through patiently when it comes to the Ethan conversation.
Okay, fair enough. So then I want to hone in on the specific one specific thing you did in the panel last night that I found very distasteful. But I want to ask you like whether you had a reason for doing it or whether it was just kind of like an offhand, like a habitual type of like verbalizing yourself, expressing yourself. So specifically, like what when you do this thing where it sort of appears like you're clip farming, like you're like, can we just acknowledge what happened, people? Can we just acknowledge that this person lied or this person made a misstatement? Like, do you have a specific reason for doing that?
Yes.
What is the reason?
The reason that I do that, it depends on which context. I can think of two times yesterday. One is with Lactoid on the War Powers Act, and the other was when Lactoid claimed not to be accusing me of bad faith, and I told him that he did. Which of those do you think it was what you're referencing?
It's potentially. I don't remember the exact time that I noticed it, but I do remember noticing it being done in that
Okay,
conversation.
so let's use the two examples then, because I did do that for those two examples. So on one, it was the War Powers Act where I could see that Lactoid was showing his belly, and he was like, "Oh, whatever," but he hadn't admitted. He actually really didn't admit fault this entire time, just so you're aware. And I nonetheless said, "Wick, I'm not moving on. The claim was this, and we need to acknowledge that he was wrong about that." So that's one example when I did that, and the other one is when um, I say, "You're accusing me of bad faith," and then he stops the conversation. Whoa! I didn't accuse you of bad faith. I didn't accuse you of bad faith. And then I said, "Wait a second. Oh, wait, no, I just need to clear this up because you did in fact accuse me of bad faith because you said right that I was interpreting you not charitably, right? That I didn't do it charitably, and isn't interpreting someone not charitably bad faith." That's when I was sort of signaling saying we need to acknowledge that you were wrong about this. You did accuse me of bad faith. Is it your position, or I guess I can answer your questions about it, but like, did you think that was inappropriate when I did that?
I think yes. I
Okay.
think it was inappropriate, and I don't think you've answered my question because I asked you what is the reason for you doing it? Like you explained the situations where you did it,
Wait, you asked if I
and
had a reason, and I answered that. You didn't ask me what my reason was.
true. Okay, so what was the like reason with respect? And I understand like if you have a reason, it's with respect to a certain goal. So I wanted to ask you like, well, what is the goal?
Yeah.
Of that is trying to be achieved by that?
The goal when in general, on substantive issues, so for example, this War Powers Act issue, is to literally clarify a really important part of the discussion for the audience and to get it off of the table and to get the concession from the opponent so that they acknowledge that they shouldn't bring this up again and that the audience knows that they agree that it was an incorrect conclusion to draw. So a perfect example of that is what I brought up with the War Powers Act, where he had made the claim that the War Powers Act essentially functions as like a 60-day free window and affirmatively authorizes the president to take some sort of military action on his own discretion. And that was his claim going into it. I said, where does it say that? Where does it say that? Where does it say that? And he tries to like say, oh, this is about reporting. And then ultimately he seems very, very uncomfortable on the point. He's waffling and he's wanting to move on. And the reason why I say, wait a second, I'm not moving on. We just need to make sure that you acknowledge that you're wrong, that the War Powers Act doesn't in fact authorize the president to take any particular action. That's done to make sure that the audience is aware that that was wrong, that he was incorrect about that I was correct about that it's not a grant of authority, and therefore people shouldn't cite it.
Yeah, so you're trying to emphasize something that you feel like it's not clear
Correct.
from the way they're answering the question. Yeah. So this is possible. Like maybe it was just very clear to me that in that conversation that he was acknowledging that he was wrong, but maybe that wouldn't be the case for everyone in the audience. So you wanted to emphasize it just in case.
Because he was
Okay,
hedging. He was hedging that entire time, and I want people to have a good analysis. That's why I was like, all right, let's deal with the authorizations under the statute that you think are applicable. So either AUMF or the War Powers Act. And he's like, let's start chronologically. Let's start in order. War Powers Act. Okay, great. Let's do War Powers Act first. War Powers Act. Where does it authorize it? Whatever. And he's just rambling on and on, rambling. Oh, this is like, and I'm trying to do respect to what he initially said, which is there is statutory authorization for what Trump is doing here. Because if people listening to Lactoid who share his opinion hear that Lactoid is saying, okay, I guess the War Powers Act doesn't do it, so it would have to be under the AUMF, and so you'd have to make the link from narco-terrorism to the Al-Qaeda attack, kind of animating spirit of the statute of the AUMF, then people are more likely to think he's wrong. And that's what I want people to think. I want people to think I'm right. I want people to think that he's wrong. And so getting him to concede that he's wrong and I'm right is a great way to do that.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I guess if you're trying to speak to the audience and signal to the audience, that makes a lot more sense now. Because I guess when I was listening to that, both, it was clear to me, but it was also like feeling like you were actually trying to have a conversation with him specifically and trying to understand him. But
well, I am trying to understand him, and when he hedges like that, I suspect he knows he's on weak ground. And sometimes I'll say, like, that you're weak on this point. I'll say something like that because I think that he understands that he was on his weak ground. And I'll give you another example of things that I do that aren't strictly to signal to the audience a particular thing, except perhaps that my interlocutor is operating in bad faith. I'll give you an example of that. Is sometimes I'll do things like, listen, this isn't really important to the issue, but I want to make sure that you can concede anything, right? I will sometimes do that, which is not on substantive grounds, but just huh?
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. And that's like, I think that is where you look your best. But I think at least it put me off when you were kind of like switching to signal to the audience something, when it feels like you've already made it clear to the interlocutor that they were wrong. Well, like to Lactoid specifically.
Yeah, but I think the bad faith is continuing to maintain the untenable position, namely that the War Powers Act grants authority for the president to do whatever he said it did. And so there should be like, the only reason that we would have an issue with this, I think, is, oh, don't kick him while he's down. Oh, it's already embarrassing. Like, why do this? Why? It's not like the minute I get a concession on it, I like move on. I mean, sometimes I'm like, whatever. I'm fucking sarcastic and I'll refer back to it. So, for example, when Gibbs said that he would be okay with America graping and pillaging a island nation as so long as it was in America's interest, I like sarcastically brought that up. that is a little bit of a virtue signal. I'll gather you, but like, it's also sometimes to realize like how extreme the people I'm debating about are. Like, these people are arguing, at least Gibbs was in that instance, not Lactoid, that it's okay to do any manner of horrible thing to other human beings so long as it merely benefits America. And I think that that's fine for me in a public debate area where, it's not just the logic of the debate. If it were that, I would keep it to that, but it's not just that. It's a kind of blood sportsy debate panel. And given that, I wanted to tell people like, hey, these guys are fucked up. It's kind of like what I did with, on Tim Pool, where I will like throw some hypotheticals at them and be like, these guys, this is really extreme. What you're saying is basically that you don't care about following the law unless it's consistent with your personal moral worldview. And that's what I do. It's a bit of a signal because it's kind of a performance. It's both a debate and kind of a performance.
I'll give you that if people were much less squeamish about just giving concession, just straight answering your questions, things would be a lot easier. But I guess like you've been doing it for so long and people just don't change. So it's kind of like we're not going to change the sheep. So we might as well adapt to them and try to play our hands the best we got.
So what would you have done in my situation? I guess I'll ask. What should I have done?
So for Lactate specifically?
Yeah.
So it did seem like there was a bit of I can agree that he was being squeamish, but I think he made a mistake in verbalizing his stance more strongly than he held it. And then when you cleared it up, he kind of realized it and wanted to give a concession. But before he could even do that, you just jumped up, hey, we just acknowledge that this person is fucking wrong, And like I said, I think there are times when you do that perfectly, beautifully, but I think in this case, it was just it might have just been a misunderstanding or a misreading.
But don't you think like this person, he's sitting here arguing that the president essentially has complete discretion to take any military action under U.S. law for 60 days approved by Congress. And he's hedging and be like, oh, well, I would love for us actually to listen. Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should actually like listen to.
Because I feel like I remember him being unsure. He didn't he explicitly say that he was unsure whether it was constitutional?
No, that for sure. No, but he was affirming that the War Powers Act gives authorization. So he had initially, he was changing because he was being very reckless. How was he being reckless? He was being reckless in that he was reading some probably AI summary of what the War Powers Act grants and just assuming that that's what it did and not realizing that I am aware of this argument and that I know that it explicitly doesn't say that. So hang on a second. So I'm just going to...
I did.
Hang on a second. We'll start it here, copy it, and then I'll share it with you so that you can see it as well in just a second. Let me turn off my video as well so that you don't get. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, just 1 second. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Congress first, exactly.
Okay. So we'll listen to this and I'll share. Share screen. Share screen. Okay, you should be able to see it now, and in a second you're going to be able to hear it. Ready?
I cannot see it.
Just click into live. You see where it says live on Discord?
Yes. Yep.
You should be able to click into the stream of the window there.
There we go.
All right. You see it, right? It's paused?
Yep. See it.
All right.
For the strikes is through Article 2 powers granted to the president to enforce the law, and that the war
Well, let's go back a little bit.
Go ahead, Wick.
With the left? Well, someone said this in the chat. I think
Can I just
with
talk?
the
Well,
left.
I want Wick.
Okay,
I'll give you a second. Okay.
Go ahead, Wick.
But what I heard, at least Lactoid's argument, is that the justification for the strikes is through Article 2 powers granted to the president to enforce the law, and that the war.
So you see Lactoid nodding right there, but just so you know. So what Wick is doing right here in the context of this, just so you can understand how we got here, is I'm saying you're not answering my question about whether the War Powers Act grants authority to the president to act. And Wick is recounting because he's Lactoid's like, you're being unfaith. You didn't listen to me. I did answer your question. And what Wick, and so he's nodding along because this guy's a bad faith piece of shit, to Wick saying, what I hear Lactoid say is that this power originates from Article 2, which is, of course, not my fucking question. So this is an example of bad faith, him nodding along, yes, I did answer something that was never asked of me. So just so you're aware of what's happening right now.
The war, what was the name of the specific 1973
War
thing?
Powers Act.
War Powers Act.
The War Powers Act does not restrict him from doing so.
And so, it doesn't restrict him from doing so. And then you'll see why I'm getting clarity on this, because you agree, none of that is the question I asked, which is, do you acknowledge that this is an authorization for the president to take action, right? One thing is saying, well, it doesn't restrict it, or another is saying, well, it comes from Article 2. None of that is saying, well, it authorizes him, which was his claim. Yeah, but that's
beyond.
Not, but that's that you agree that
it does not restrict. It does not restrict that he would have to go to Congress first. Exactly.
Okay.
So now, Pisco,
I'm not going to get distracted, dude.
Pisco, you're saying, hold on, you're saying I'm not going to get distracted, but Wick heard my argument.
So now he wants to change the issue, more bad faith, into me not hearing the answer and me being bad faith and doing a character attack on me in that sense. So just to be clear, so he heard my irrelevant answer to a question that was never asked, but you didn't. Isn't that weird?
For some reason you didn't. Do you have any idea as to why that is?
So I'm not going to get distracted. The question
because he listens so well.
The question isn't, does the War Powers Act stripped any kind of constitutional authority the president has? That wasn't the claim made by Lactoid. What Lactoid says is that the War Powers Act grants him authority. Now, Wick, you understand the difference between something purporting to take away
restricting and granting
authority, right? And you understand that that Lactoid's claim was that the War Powers Act granted. He wasn't refuting the notion that I was giving that it took away inherent power, because I never made that claim.
He might be wrong that it granted him.
He might be wrong that it granted him. So no clarity yet, right? He might be wrong that it granted it.
But I think it's overall.
Wait, no. I need him to acknowledge. Are you wrong? Because the thing is, this entire time, I've known what the War Powers says, and the War Powers explicitly says that this should not be read to authorize the action of any particular hostility. So look at that moment, right? So Wick is trying to give a little bit of an out because he feels bad for Lactoid, because Lactoid just got graped on this point. And I'm saying, no, I want clarity actually here. I want to actually know if you changed your mind. That's why I'm pushing it. I just want Lactoid to just admit he was wrong. If he's good faith, and no answer. No, of course I'm not wrong. Of course it does authorize it. No, I never claimed that it authorized it. Come on, no. What we have is he's trying to think about, what can I do to not answer the question? That is the definite, or not saying something like, I already answered this question, Pisco. I already said it wasn't authorized, and now you're just trying to dunk on me. So I'm gonna keep playing, but then I'll let you get your response.
Is it okay if we fucking
wait, no, if he's
good, be okay if we captured Netanyahu?
And now Gibbs is trying to run interference.
Put him on trial.
Let's not distract. Wait, no. So to be clear,
why don't you
the War Powers Act, which the claim was that he, on his cursory reading, this granted that this granted the president authority to take military action, even though the War Powers Act specifically disclaims that interpretation by its text. And my question for Lactoid is, when you said that, were you wrong?
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rest the understanding of my answer. Wick understood it. I think the audience understands it.
Understood it. Wick understood it. Like, this is all hedging. This is all bullshit.
Here's what I think happened.
We all understand.
Here's what I think happened.
He's running from my question.
I think that, in response to the claim of, without congressional approval, can he do XYZ? When I said it grants the authority to that he can do that without congressional authority.
When I said he can do that.
When you say,
you say
granted wrong.
When you say granted wrong,
it doesn't restrict.
It actually doesn't restrict. As though my claim were a semantic one. As though the claim is a semantic one. So he's trying to chalk this all up to, Pisco being fucking semantic Pisco again. That's what he's trying to do. That's definitionally bad faith. He understands that that's not what's happening here. He knows that I fucking got his ass. He knows he was dead wrong. He knows all that shit.
Ability to do so without congressional
You know,
if you're saying that
If you're
the
saying
the semantics are critically important between my usage of the term granted compared to not restricted, fair enough. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What the fuck does that mean? Totally unclear. Wait, so is it your position or not, Lactoid?
But what I think is happening is that the reason why you're hyperfixating on this point, okay, and it's the reason why you
now about why I'm doing this and about what my motivation is in doing this.
Behave the way in every panel you do,
and how I always behave,
including this one, is you're just looking for an optics win.
You're just looking for an optics win. No,
you're hyperfixating on a very specific semantic issue.
No, it's not a hyperfixation on a semantic issue. It's a substantive one. One of from where he derives the authority and from which, from where does it displace authority? And why is this bad faith? Again, to repeat, I never made the claim that the War Powers Act restricts in substantive ways the president's initial authority to take military action. That was never my claim. So it's bad faith to strawman someone and pretend a claim that was never made was the claim that they made. It's his claim that we're assessing regarding whether it authorizes certain action. So that's why it's bad faith. And what he's saying is you're hyper fixating on the point because you're shaman. That's what, and you always do this, and you're always mean to me.
Oh, you're hyper fixating on a very specific semantics issue.
No,
this is why.
No. We'll move on. It's embarrassing at this point. It's really embarrassing. So we can move on. I'm cringing. So we can move on.
No.
We can move on.
And this is the reason why. Good for you. Good. Now, Wick, this is the reason why. When Wick said, "I think I know what's going on," and he recounted a perfect understanding of what my point was. To
a question that wasn't answered. Asked.
Despite the fact that me and Wick don't.
And look, by the way, I'm not the only one. Look in the chat. I just bring up a chat.
Understanding of what my point was. A perfect understanding of what my point was.
He can't concede the War Powers Act was a restriction and doesn't authorize anything. So the chat is understanding that there's no clarity, that he hasn't conceded yet.
Despite the fact that me and Wick don't agree most of the time. But
Wick understood me, even though Wick and I are big debate opponents. You didn't, so this proves you're a bad person.
But for some reason, you can't. And it's because of the way you operate.
Listen. Wick understood the dilemma that you walked into, which is that your claim, faithful representation as you're claiming it is, isn't the original claim that the War Powers Act authorizes particular military action. So yes, I'm happy to move on. And we all agree that the War Powers Act is a restriction. No, wait. But this is what it leaves us with. What it leaves us with is, well, given that the War Powers Act is a restriction on presidential authority, and look at this, I don't spike the ball any further than that. I understand that he is showing me his belly. He's asking me to rub it. And I just move on. He's wrong. I still haven't gotten a clear concession from him. He said, fair enough. It's just a fucking whatever. But I just move on. I'm like, fine, whatever. I'll move on. Because it's embarrassing to me to watch you struggle even further to justify your bullshit. So I just don't understand. Like, give me your thought process on what we just saw.
I think this is a perfect illustration of what happened and what my feel was while watching the conversation. So you're right. He was wrong. And there's definitely a way to play it better. Like, I think if he just conceded and said, yes, I was wrong, I restate the claim I made and stuff, I think that would be, from his part, what he should do. But I do think there is a way for you to play it better if that is your goal. In the sense of there is a way to get around people's ego, because he's clearly being defensive, and his response was because he felt like his ego was being attacked. And this is like just something humans just generally do, right? We feel attacked and we defend our ego, and even if it's not the most rational thing to do to further the conversation. But if you just made the claim for him, like Lacto, you were wrong. You said that it didn't restrict, but my question was that whether it granted. He would. I feel like his ego would not have been as attacked as if, like the same way as when you sort of stop and ask him questions to make him walk through his incoherence.
Why are you asking that I do that? So you're saying that'll make me look better?
I think it would make you look better, yes. In my eyes, at least. Okay. I'm not your entire audience. I don't know how many people agree with me, but in my eyes, it would make you look better. And I think you do that. You do that a lot of the time, and you've been doing it. And I think that is way more appealing to me.
Yeah, no, I understand that might be more appealing to you, but understand what you're asking me to do. In this context, and people might disagree with this. I think Lactoid is being bad faith. I think Lactoid is being weaselly, pretending to answer questions that were never asked, strawmanning me, attacking my character, saying I always act like this, you're hyperfixating, you're being pedantic, you're doing something, which I'm not doing, all desperately in bad faith to try to muddle things up for the audience. And so you're asking me to take like a superhuman level of charity, and like, for the sake of, I guess I guess you're framing it as it's beneficial to me, but just understand what you're asking me to undertake is in the faith of what I understand and what I think is clearly an onslaught of bad faith, to be like, you know what, I understand your point. I understand where you're coming from, Lactoid. So I agree, probably not like a substantive restriction on any kind of inherent authority, but I thought we were talking about authorization. Weren't we talking about authorization? And it just gets to the same thing. He's going to give like a fucking 2-paragraph answer, which isn't addressing what was going on.
If you do what I said, do you want to know how you come off to me in that
Yeah.
conversation, in that scenario?
Sure.
So if you just sort of answer the question from walk them through their incoherence, it seems to me like, hey, this is the guy that's the professional in the room. This is the adult in the room. This is the guy that actually knows his shit, and he's trying to help these children understand stuff. That is how you come off to me when you give more charity. The way you come off to me here is just sort of like Jamie Lannister versus that boy that I don't know, that boy that Joffrey killed in season 1.
Well, I appreciate that allusion. But the thing is, like, okay, I hear you. There are some situations in which I will be patient. I thought I was exceedingly patient with the dude that just showed
I
up
think that's
just now.
most of the time, yeah.
But in a panel like this, on an issue of real importance, this guy just tried to like fucking AI and bullshit his way through and sandbag me with some law that he hadn't read, had no understanding of, to bring it up as a point to defend Trump when he had no evidence to do so. So yeah, I want to metaphorically strangle that argument and make him suffer for that tactic in the eyes of the audience. Now,
I like that. It's not that I don't understand and can't empathize with the internal feeling, but it does, like, you are getting your emotions. You're letting your emotions get to you, and it's okay. Like, in your eyes, it's justified. But I'm just saying, like, it is. From my end, it looks better if you can restrain it and be the man in the room. That's just what I'm saying. You know.
I think that is a kind of like, it's kind of a tone argument and presentation, like, be a little gentler. And when you introduce the point, because you're not telling me to avoid the point, right? You're not telling me to abandon the point.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
You're telling me.
Like, I'll give you an example. I think the conversation, like, I haven't watched the entire thing because I thought Stream Riff was insufferable. But I think the way you engaged with him in this like conversation tonight was perfect. That is the OG, like the, I don't know, how do I say, like the top Pisco, right?
I
top
appreciate
Pisco
that.
content.
I think it's a lot easier to do
And
when it's one-on-one like that. Because when I know that Gibbs is just like waiting in the wings to say some fucking spiel about random stuff, I get more like, I want to get my shit out. I want to make sure this isn't lost. And I do try to like impose myself on the panel in that way just to make sure that the point isn't lost. But so I would appreciate like being able to do that on panels, but sometimes unfortunately the moderation is more loose. And but no, I'll definitely like think about the.
It's hard, man. We're human, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm not shitting on you for that. Like, people, like, nobody's perfect, right? But I just wanted to get my 2 cents and also just understand your thought process behind the thing, you know. And it's also there's also like, I think this happened in the first Connor conversation as well, but I don't remember that as fully, so I can't bring up specific examples. So I feel like it's not fair to.
Oh, it was the immigration one. So it's so funny. I like sometimes I have bad recall for certain things, but like for some of these debates, I have like pretty decent recall of what happened. So I was like, wait a second. I was talking about like immigration laws, like federal immigration laws, and from the perspective of like immigration itself, not naturalization, and not anything like not stuff. So can you just admit you were wrong that like when you said that there actually was
and then
some
he doubled
law?
down on it. Went on for
He did double down on it. Yeah. And he never conceded.
Yeah, it was
So,
horrible.
yeah. That's what I mean. Like,
But again,
I don't dunk once I have the a clear concession, except in like closing arguments, or maybe I'll use the kind of whatever the dunk or the concession or whatever it is as part of a follow on a different point. But once I hear them say, like when Gibbs said this shit about going and invading people, like I'm just like, okay, fine. I let it speak. It speaks for itself, and maybe I'll make a reference to it in the future. But it's not.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like, where you were wrong, and you said you were right. Once I get the actual concession, and then I'm just like, all right, cool.
Yeah, but I mean, you get what I mean. Like, it's not that I'm saying that these people are doing it better than you. Far from it. Like, you're doing way better than most people I see online. But I just feel like I see you do better sometimes and sometimes worse, and I get sad when I see you do worse.
I appreciate
from my
you.
perspective, obviously, I don't think that's an objective good and bad.
Well,
yeah, that would be it for me, I think.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your input, and yeah, stay chilling. And if you have any other thoughts later on, come back.
Gotcha, man. Enjoy your night.
Peace out, bro. All right, we got Dougie. What up, Dougie?
Hold on, let me mute this stream.
Yeah, me.
Hello.
How we doing?
Hey, I have do you talk to conservatives or only your fans?
I love talking to conservatives.
Oh, okay.
So, are you conservative?
I don't know. Depends how you define it.
Okay.
I did not watch your debate. I've just been watching your stream for a little bit, and I see you're talking about. I'm assuming you disagree with the kidnapping of Maduro, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't want to talk morally. I want to talk more like legally. Do you think he was like Trump was legally allowed to do that?
No.
And why not?
I believe it is an ultra-virus act, an act for which he has no authority, therefore illegal.
So, I'll just start off with, like, obviously you're a lawyer, and I'm not very nearly as knowledgeable as like stuff like on like law as you. But so, can you like walk me through? So, like the War Powers Act, it says like for 60 days, like without congressional approval, like you can, like the president can like conduct war without like needing or before having to withdraw, right?
No, it doesn't.
Or is that like, what does it say?
Well, aren't you bringing the claim? You want me to read the whole? I have it actually ready, but one sec. So here's the War Powers Act, and nowhere does it say what you said. It says a bunch of other stuff. Do you want me to read it all?
Only the relevant parts, not the whole thing.
Okay.
Well, how big is it?
It's 5 pages.
Okay, just whatever the relevant part is.
All right. So let's just read it. Joint resolution by Congress. I believe this was signed by the president. Concerning the war powers of Congress and the president, resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled. Short title. This joint resolution may be called as the War Powers Resolution, but it's often referred to as the War Powers Act. Section 2, purpose and policy. So this isn't any operative text. It's just stating what the purpose of the law is, okay? It is the purpose of this joint resolution to fulfill the intent of the framers of the Constitution of the United States and to ensure that the collective judgment of both the Congress and the President will apply to the introduction of the United States Armed Forces into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances and to the continued use of such forces in hostilities or in such situations. So it's saying the purpose of this is to fulfill the framers' intent, okay? Not much there, just kind of pretty general. B, under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, there's reference to legislative powers, right? Article 1, not Article 2. It is specifically provided that Congress shall have the power to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution not only its own powers, but also the powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. It's stating that Congress has authority under Article 1 to sort of create laws that affect other branches' conduct, including the presidency. C, the constitutional powers of the president as commander-in-chief to introduce United States armed forces into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances are exercised only pursuant to 1, a declaration of war, 2, specific statutory authorization, or 3, a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territories, or its possessions, or its armed forces. So this is taking the view, right? The War Powers Act is taking the view that the president is only authorized to use armed forces in situations that constitute a declaration where there's a declaration of war, or where there's a congressional statutory authorization, or where there's literally a national emergency because of an attack on the country, right? So these are all purposes, right? But it's laying out Congress's view, which is that the president doesn't have exclusive authority here, and in fact, the president is limited when using his armed forces, or sorry, the American armed forces, only in these limited situations. That's the view of this act. Number 3, consultation. The president, so you agree so far, no authorization for the president to do anything so far, right?
Well, if it met that criteria, then it would, right?
Well, right. If there was a declaration of war, which there isn't, right?
Yeah.
If there was specific statutory authorization, which we're establishing right now, right? We're questioning.
Yeah.
Or if there is a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, which, again, we can talk about. That condition is what Congress's view is on when things are authorized. But this specific text recognizes Congress's view. This doesn't specifically authorize any attack, right? It doesn't authorize it. It's recognizing when it would be authorized, but it's not itself authorizing this text. Agreed?
Okay.
This text does not authorize any conduct, right? The section is called Purpose and Policy. All it's doing is talking about the views of Congress related to the War Powers Resolution they're about to pass. It's not giving any authority. Agreed? It's just expressing a view.
Yeah.
Okay. Consultation. So far, nothing authorizing any particular action. Consultation. The president, in every possible instance, shall, this is commanding the president, consult with Congress before introducing United States armed forces into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances, and after every such introduction shall consult regularly with the Congress until United States armed forces are no longer engaged in hostilities or have been removed from such situations. So this is not granting the president any authority, correct?
Yep.
It's requiring the president to do things. It's not allowing him authorization to attack or to do any kind of military action. It's saying if the president does that, you have this obligation to inform us under certain circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 4, reporting. In the absence of a declaration of war, in any case in which United States armed forces are introduced, 1, into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances. 2, into the territory, airspace, or waters of a foreign nation while equipped for combat, except for deployments which relate solely to supply, replacement, repair, or training, or in numbers which substantially enlarge U.S. armed forces equipped for combat already located in a foreign nation. The president shall submit within 48 hours to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and to the President pro tempore of the Senate a report in writing setting forth a bunch of different stuff. The president shall provide such other information as Congress may request. And C, whenever United States armed forces are introduced into hostilities or into any situation described in subsection sub A, the president shall, so long as such armed forces continue to be engaged in such hostilities or situations, report to Congress periodically on whatever. None of that is authorizing any particular action, right? It's just reporting requirements for the president, right? It's an obligation for the president to report to Congress on certain things, on certain matters, in certain times, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not authorizing anything. Congressional action, all right, so we're probably not going to get anything there, right? Each report submitted pursuant to section 4A sub 1, so the previous, shall be transmitted to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President pro tem on the same calendar day, so you have to do it on the same day when you submit it. So this is an additional obligation, right? Within 60-day calendar after a report is submitted or is required to be submitted pursuant to section 4A1, the President shall terminate any use of U.S. armed forces with respect to which such report was submitted, unless the Congress has declared war or has enacted a specific authorization for such use of U.S. armed forces, has extended by law such 60-day period, or is physically unable to meet as a result of an armed attack, such 60-day period shall be extended for not more than an additional 30 days. The president determines and certifies to the Congress in writing that unavoidable military necessity respecting the safety of the U.S. armed forces requires the continued use of such forces in the course of bringing about prompt removal of such forces. Notwithstanding subsection B, at any time the U.S. armed forces are engaged in hostilities outside the territory of the United States, its possessions in the territories without a declaration of war or specific statutory authorization, such forces shall be removed with the president if the Congress so directs by concurrent resolution. So this is giving so within 60 days, requiring the president to terminate forces, right? And otherwise having to obliged by congressional enactment. So that's not authorizing any action. That's basically saying, there's a default presumption that you need to terminate the actions, and we additionally are claiming additional authorization to remove such forces whenever we want, right? So this isn't authorizing anything.
Yep.
All right, congressional priority procedures for joint resolution bill. Let's just skip this because this is just an internal rule of like what you do for these resolutions. Okay, so none of this is helpful to granting authority. This is just like an internal legislative thing. Got it?
Yep.
Likewise, congressional priority procedures for concurrent resolutions. So one applies to concurrent resolutions, one applies to joint resolutions. These are internal deliberation things. Okay. And then here's the interpretation of joint resolution. And this part, I think, should put to bed the notion. Authority to introduce United States armed forces into hostilities or into situations where involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances shall not be inferred from any provision of law, whether or not in effect before the date of the enactment of joint resolution, including any provision contained in any appropriate act, unless such provision specifically authorizes the introduction of the United States armed forces into hostilities or into such situations, and stating that it is intended to constitute specific statutory authorization within the meaning of this joint resolution, or from any treaty heretofore or hereafter ratified, unless such treaty is implemented by legislation specifically authorizing the introduction of U.S. armed forces into hostilities or into such situations, and stating that it is intended to constitute specific statutory authorization within the meaning of the joint resolution. Nothing in this joint resolution shall be construed to require any further specific statutory authorization to permit members of the United States Armed Forces to participate jointly with members of the armed forces of one or more foreign countries in the headquarters operations of high-level military commands, which were established prior to the date of enactment, not relevant here. And nothing in this joint, so we'll just skip this. This is just how to construe it. Nothing in this joint resolution is intended to alter the constitutional authority of the Congress or the President or the provision of existing treaties, or shall be construed as granting any authority to the President with respect to the introduction of U.S. armed forces into hostilities or into situations where involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstance in which authority he would not have had in the absence of this joint resolution. So you would agree, not only is there no actual place in this law where it authorizes the President to take any action, the law itself, the joint resolution passed, specifically disclaims interpreting it as doing so.
Yeah, so I can see what you mean when you say it doesn't grant. It's just like outlining. I don't even know how you would word it. I see what you mean, though.
Yeah, it doesn't. You agree, wouldn't you, that it doesn't authorize the President to take any action, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the part I'm going to look at is so it said proclamation of war, a statute from Congress, and what was the third thing? And I forget what section it was.
What are you? Just tell me the idea that you're trying to refer to, and you can get to it.
Yeah, do like in there? Do you know? So it said like these three circumstances. It said like if there's a proclamation of war, if there's a
specific statutory authorization,
Congress,
or a national emergency created by an attack on the United States.
Yeah. So the national emergency part, wouldn't that grant him the authority to do so?
Well, I'm just saying we can talk about it. We can talk about those. So if you want, I can get into this whole national emergency shit. But all I'm just trying to get you to agree to is this law doesn't authorize anything of the President.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I
So
agree.
now we're just like saying, are there inherent powers for the President in certain circumstances to use the military? And the answer to that is going to be yes. But just because it's authorized in some cases doesn't mean that it's authorized in this case.
And so why is it not authorized in this case?
Because there is no declaration of war, because there is no specific statutory authorization, and because there is no national emergency created by an attack upon the United States.
Okay, so why is it that like in the past presidents have like, you know,
that's not
committed acts
responsive.
of war without those-
So I'm happy to answer that, but I just want to be clear. Let's just go through all these, right? One, you agree? No declaration of war. Agreed.
Yes.
No specific
Yes.
statutory authorization for the action taken. Agreed.
Yes.
And you agree Venezuela has not created a national emergency by attacking the United States?
I would disagree with that.
Okay. When did Venezuela attack the United States of America?
They do every day when they like allow the drug cartels to ship drugs into the country.
So Mexico has attacked the United
I
States?
think that is.
Has Mexico attacked the United States?
Yeah.
Has China attacked the United States?
Yes.
Okay. So you think that the meaning of attack here includes anytime you introduce drugs illegally into the United States?
Yes.
Why do you think that that's what attack means in this context?
I think it because that's what's happening. It's like people are dying because of what is happening.
Yeah, but people dying doesn't mean there's an attack. Agreed, right? Someone can have cancer, they're not being attacked.
Okay, let's say.
Wait, do you agree with that or not? That you can die, there can be death,
Yes,
and it doesn't require
Yes.
there to be an attack. Okay, cool.
Let's say Venezuela shipped in like chemical weapons into the country, and it was to be used by like terrorists. Would that be an attack?
Yeah, so the mere shipment of weapons, no. The shipment of weapons for the purpose of contributing to actual attacks, I would say yes. That's not what's happening.
I mean, like, okay, you know what? I'll just concede on this
yeah,
point.
yeah. It's not attacking us,
Okay,
right?
I'll concede on this point.
Okay. So then
But
that's what I mean
I'm
by
confused.
Yeah, you're asking now why about the other cases, right? The other situations?
Yes.
Okay. So let's take each of them. So bring up the hypotheticals you want to bring up of the other cases and why either it's legal or illegal. Just so you know, I'm not going to say that everything America has done has been legal in the past. So you are. But go ahead.
So then why? So if they did illegal things, why weren't they prosecuted for it?
Just because
Like,
something
why
is
wasn't there,
illegal,
like,
just because something is illegal doesn't mean that they're prosecuted or there will be punishment. So things can be illegal and there be no punishment. Things can be illegal and there could be no prosecution. It's actually even possible for something to be illegal and that no court is allowed to hear it. So illegality doesn't turn on whether or not you can adjudicate something or whether there are in fact proceedings or whether there is in fact punishment or even the potential for punishment. Illegality is something, all illegality means is, are you in accordance with the law or not? That's what illegality means.
So then, wouldn't Trump's like, if Trump was looking for legal counsel saying, "Can I do this?" Wouldn't they point to like those previous times and say, "The U.S. did this," and he would like cite that as a
Yeah, but that wouldn't make him
reason
right.
or
That
like
would,
a justification.
yeah, but that wouldn't make him right. It would be like saying, all right, well, America has
Legally or morally?
Legally. Agreed. Just because someone is, so like if someone's like, wait a second, this mafia guy got away with murder before, so we should murder because that's legal because they weren't punished, and I'm citing that.
Well, I don't think it was illegal. I think the reason like nothing came of that is because people acknowledged that, like under Article 2 of the Constitution, that the president's the commander in chief and can do military actions
whenever he wants.
That's why,
for any reason.
I mean, that's happened.
Is that
in the
your
past and
view?
hasn't
No,
been
I'm
challenged,
asking
so
if it
I
happened in
would
the
say
past.
yes.
So is it your view that the president has the power to use the military whenever he wants for any reason under Article 2?
Yes.
All right. What part of Article 2 says that?
It doesn't say it, but it hasn't
Oh.
been challenged.
Well, just the fact that something hasn't been challenged doesn't mean that it says it. How would you? It's your claim that that's.
I didn't say it says it.
Sorry. That it means it. That it's contained in Article 2.
I think it's contained because if like, or okay, it's not contained, but it's implied.
Where? What is that implication? From where? How do you get the implication?
Because I think it's like kind of vague when it says commander in chief, and it doesn't like specifically outline when the president can act militarily. And so we would look at times where the president has acted militarily to see if this is under the powers of the president.
Well, hang on a second. Aren't we supposed to? So you're saying the president's conduct can change what the Constitution means? That the president doing something now changes or clarifies the scope of what the Constitution means?
No, but if you would want to see what it means, you would look at what has happened, and if
why,
like something's happened,
something happening after the enactment date of Article 2, you would look to things that occur afterwards. Why?
To see if it falls under the purview of the president.
Why would you just look at presidential conduct in years after the enactment of Article 2 to define what they meant by Article 2 or what it means?
I mean, I guess you could do that.
No, I'm asking why would you? Why? So I would think, right, like if you're enacting a law that limits the, and I have textual reasons why I think that this is absurd. What you're proposing. So this is just to get in your head a little bit. Like you shouldn't have this intuition that because the president does something in the past and is not punished for it, therefore it's legal under the Constitution. I don't know where that comes from. In fact, there are situations in which the government has taken things that are like, has done things that are like so obviously unconstitutional. John Adams was never punished for this at all. He passed a law that made it basically a crime to criticize him. It's called the Sedition
Yeah,
Act.
but then wasn't that struck down?
No, never. I mean, it elapsed, or they like passed a law to get rid of it at some point. But there was never like punishment for it, and it was never like firmly decided by a court of law. That all I'm trying to say is like just because there was a time in which America did a certain thing doesn't mean that's legal. Same thing with like the gun rights, right? The first time the Supreme Court recognized an individual right to possess guns was in Heller. That's in 2009. And for years back, going back to the Sullivan Act in New York, going back to laws in Texas that were enacted as gun restrictions, there was no notion, right, that the Second Amendment, as applied to the states through the 14th Amendment, that this protected an individual's right to possess weapons, ever. And yet, notwithstanding that, in retrospect, we say, oh, yes, illegal. So just the practice of a government doing something in the past, it could be for a bunch of reasons that we don't get to the right answer, quote unquote right answer. A, because the executive never, prosecutes itself. B, the executive pardons whoever is guilty if it's a criminal thing. C, no one thinks to challenge it. D, there are other like structural reasons why like everyone just lets it stand. There are a ton of reasons why something is not challenged or not. There's no like final resolution. Like there's no final resolution on what Nixon did with Watergate. And yet, right, it can still be the case that we look back and it's like, it seems like what Nixon was doing here.
Well, there was a final resolution.
I guess Trump
He
United
admitted
States
that he was guilty.
No, when?
When he got pardoned. A pardon's an admission of guilt, is it not?
Says you.
What do you mean, says me?
Says you.
Do you disagree?
I don't have the view that it does that. That doesn't mean that I disagree like strongly. But where is the evidence of your claim?
That a pardon's an admission of guilt?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. You repeated it. Did you? I'm asking that.
I don't. I'm sure if I looked for it, I could find where. I just heard this so many times. I haven't even thought of it.
Okay. Well, until you do that,
I thought you would have agreed with that.
Why?
I mean, I can look it up, I guess. I've just heard it so many times that like if somebody accepts a pardon, it's an admission of guilt. Here, let me see where it historically comes from. Maybe there's like some case law in it or something. I don't know. So when I go to Google, it says the Burdick precedent in 1915, where the Supreme Court, in their ruling, acknowledges that accepting a pardon implies that the person is confessing to the crime.
Implies that they're confessing to accepting the pardon, but not giving a pardon, right?
Yeah, I'm saying accepting. I'm not saying that. I forgot.
What's the case law? Can you give me the citation?
Wait, let me. Burdick v. United States, 1915.
Okay. And where is the line that you're saying that is admission?
I will have to find it.
Why don't we just read it? Let's read the case. It's not that long.
What do you mean? This is like
Not that long.
this is very long.
It's not.
Hold on, I'm gonna try to Control F and find it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read it while you do that.
Okay. No. Oh, okay. Wait. Hold on. Actually, don't read it.
Why not?
I do. I literally just don't believe you.
All right, I'm gonna read it anyway.
You believe this?
Believe
No,
what?
you believe this. You just want to see
Believe
if I know
what?
this. That a pardon's an admission of guilt.
I don't
You
have a view
believe
on
this.
that. I don't have a view on that.
Yes, bro.
I don't have a view on that.
If I could pull up a transcript of every stream, there's no way you haven't said this. I've heard this said so many times.
I promise you, I've never said that. All right.
Okay.
Mr. Justin McKenna delivered the opinion in court. Error to review a judgment for contempt against verdict upon presentment of the federal grand jury, refusing to answer certain questions that put him in an investigation then pending before the grand jury into alleged customs fraud in violation of these various sections. Burdick first appeared before the grand jury and refused to answer questions as to the directions he gave and the sources of his information concerning certain articles in the New York Tribune regarding the frauds under investigation. He is the city editor of that paper. He declined to answer, claiming upon his oath that his answers might tend to criminate him. Thereupon, he was remanded to appear at a later date, and upon so appearing, he was handed a pardon, which he was told he had been obtained for him upon the strength of his testimony before the other grand jury. The following is a copy of it. Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States of America, to all whom these presents shall come, whereas George Burdick, an editor of the New York Tribune, has declined to testify before a federal grand jury now in session in the SDNY in a proceeding entitled U.S. v. John Doe and Richard Roe as to the source of information which he had in the New York Tribune office or in his possession or under his control at the time he sent whatever, on the grounds that it would tend to incriminate him, whereas the United States Attorney for the SDNY desires to use the said George Burdick as a witness. So now, therefore, be it known that I, in consideration of the premises, divers other good and sufficient reasons for me thereunto moving, do hereby grant a full and unconditional pardon. All right, so let's get to the legal analysis. The question in this case, in fact, is the effect of the unaccepted pardon. Right? Unaccepted pardon. The Solicitor General, in his discussion of the question following the division of the District Court, contends 1. that the President has power to pardon an offense before admission or conviction of it, and 2. the acceptance of the pardon is not necessary to its complete exculpating effect. The conclusion is hence deduced that the pardon removed from Burdick all danger of accusation or conviction of crime, and that therefore the answers to the questions put to him could not tend to or accomplish his incrimination. Plaintiff in error counters the contention in conclusion with directly opposing ones and makes other contentions for which attack the sufficiency of the pardon as immunity and power of the President to grant a pardon for an offense not precedently established nor confessed nor defined. The discussion of counsel is as broad as their contentions. Our consideration may be more limited. In our view of this case, it is not material to decide whether the pardoning hour may be exercised before conviction. We may, however, refer to some aspects of the contentions of the plaintiff in error, although the case may be brought into the narrow question, is the acceptance of a pardon necessary? We are relieved from much discussion of it. Indeed, all the principles upon which its solution depends were there considered, and the facts of the case gave a peculiar interesting application in U.S. v. Wilson. There were a number of indictments against Wilson, one against Porter, blah, 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 blah. Let's keep going to the actual legal stuff. There can be no doubt, therefore, of the contention of the Attorney General, and we have quoted it in order to estimate accurately the response of the court to it. The response was complete and considered the contention in two aspects. 1, a pardon as the act of the President, the official act of the Constitution, and 2, the attitude and right of the person to whom it is tendered. Of the former, it was said the power had been exercised. From that source of authority and principle, the court deduced and declared upon the conclusion, a pardon is an act of grace proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of the laws, which exempts the individual on whom it is bestowed from the punishment of the law inflicted for the crime he has committed. It is the private, though official act of executive magistrate delivered to the individual for whose benefit it is intended. An emphasis of the official act and its functional deficiency, if not accepted by him to whom it is tendered, it was said, a private deed not communicated to him, whatever may be its character, whether a pardon or release, is totally unknown and cannot be acted upon. Turning then to the other side, that is the effect of the pardon on whom it is offered, and completing its description and expressing the condition of its consummation, that was said, a pardon is a deed, to the validity of which delivery is essential, and delivery is not complete without acceptance. It may then be rejected by the person to whom it is tendered, and if it be rejected, we have discovered no power in a court to force it on him. That a pardon by its mere issue has automatic effect, resistless by him to whom it is tendered, forcing upon him by mere executive power whatever consequences it may have, or however he may regard it, which seems to be the contention of the government in the case at bar, was rejected by the court with particularity and emphasis. The decision is unmistakable. A pardon was denominated as the private act, the private deed of the executive magistrate, and the denomination was advisedly selected to mark the incompleteness of the act or deed without its acceptance. Indeed, the grace of a pardon, though good in its intention, may be only in pretense or seeming. In pretense as having purpose not moving from the individual to whom it is offered, in seeming as involving consequences of even greater disgrace than those from which it purports to relieve. Circumstances may be made to bring innocence under the penalties of the law. If so brought, escape by confession of guilt implied in the acceptance of a pardon may be rejected, preferring to be the victim of the law rather than its acknowledged transgressor, preferring death even to certain infamy. This, at least theoretically, is a right, and is a right often best tested in the extreme. It may be supposed, the court said in U.S. v. Wilson, that no being condemned to death would reject a pardon, but the rule must be the same in capital cases and in misdemeanors. A pardon may be conditional, and the condition may be more objectionable than the punishment inflicted by the judgment. The case would seem to need no further comment, and we have quoted from it not only for its authority but for its argument. It demonstrates by both the necessity of the acceptance of a pardon to its legal efficacy, and the court did not hesitate in decision, as we have seen, whether the alternative of acceptance, whether it be death or a lesser penalty. The contrast shows the right of the individual against the exercise of executive power not solicited by him nor accepted by him. The principle declared in U.S. v. Wilson have endured for years. No case has reversed or modified them. It was with the fullest knowledge of the law upon the subject of the pardon, the philosophy of the government, and its bearing upon the Constitution was when this court instructed Chief Justice Marshall to declare the doctrine of that case. And in Commonwealth v. Lockwood, it was said by Mr. Justice Gray, speaking of the Supreme Court of Massachusetts, he was then a member, it is within the election defendant whether he will avail himself of a pardon from the executive by the pardon, absolute or conditional. The whole discussion of the learned justice will repay a reference, blah, blah, blah. U.S. v. Wilson, however, is attempted to be removed as authority by the contention that it dealt with conditional pardons, and that besides, a witness cannot apprehend from his testimony a conviction of guilt, which conviction he himself has the power to avert, or be heard to say that the testimony can be used adversely to him, when he himself has the power to prevent it by accepting the immunity offered him. In support of the contentions, there is an intimation of analogy between pardon and amnesty. Cases are cited, and certain statutes of the United States are adduced, whereby immunity was imposed in certain instances, and under its unsolicited protection, testimony has been exacted against the claim of privilege asserted by witnesses. There is plausibility in the contentions. It disappears upon reflection. Let us consider the contentions in their order. 1. To hold that the principle of U.S. v. Wilson was expressed only as to conditional pardons would be to assert that the language and illustrations which were used to emphasize the principle announced were meant only to destroy it. Besides, the pardon passed on was not conditional. It was limited in that, and only in that, it was confined to the crime for which the defendant had been convicted and for which he had been sentenced to suffer death. This was its emphasis and its distinction. Other charges were pending against them, and it was expressed that the pardon should not extend to them. But such would have been its effect without expression, and we may say that it had more precision than the pardon in the pending case. Wilson had been indicted for a specific statutory crime, convicted and sentenced to suffer death. It was the crime so defined and established that the pardon was directed. In the case at bar, nothing is defined. There is no identity of the offenses pardoned, and no other clue to ascertain them, but the information incorporated in an article in a newspaper, and not that entirely, for absolution is declared for whatever crimes may have been committed or taken part in connection with any other article, matter, or thing concerning which he may be interrogated. It is hence contended by Burdick that the pardon is illegal for the absence of specification, not reciting the offenses upon which it is intended to operate, worthless, therefore, as immunity. To support the contention, cases are cited. It is asserted besides that the pardon is void, being outside of the power of the President under the Constitution of the United States, because it was issued before accusation or conviction or admission of an offense. This, it is insisted, is precluded by the constitutional provision which gives power only to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, and it is argued, in effect, that not only in the imagination or purpose of the executive magistrate can an offense against the United States be established, but only by the confession of the offending individual or the judgment of the judicial tribunals. We do not dwell further on the attack, but prefer to place this case on the ground we have stated. May plaintiff in error, having the means of immunity at hand, that is, the pardon of the President, refuse to testify on the ground that his testimony may have an incriminating effect. A superficial consideration might dictate a negative answer, but the answer would confound rights which are distinct and independent. It is to be borne in mind that the power of the President under the Constitution to grant pardons and the right of witness must be kept in accommodation. Both have sanctioned the Constitution, and it should therefore be the anxiety of the law to preserve both and to leave each in its proper place. In this, as other conflicts between personal rights and the power of the government, technical, even nice distinctions are proper to be regarded. Granting then that the pardon was legally issued and was sufficient for immunity, it was Burdick's right to refuse it. And as we have seen, it is therefore not becoming effective, it therefore not becoming effective, his right under the Constitution to decline to testify remained to be asserted, and the reason for his action were personal. It is true, we have said, that the law regards only mere penal consequences and not the personal disgrace or opprobrium attaching to the exposure of crime, but certainly such consequence may influence the assertion or relinquishment of a right. This consideration is not out of place in the case at bar. If it be objected that the sensitiveness of Burdick was extreme because his refusal to answer was itself an implication of a crime, we answer not necessarily, in fact, not at all in theory of law. It supposed only a possibility of a charge of a crime and interposed protection against the charge and reaching beyond it against furnishing what might be urged or used as evidence to support it. This brings us to the differences between legislative immunity and a pardon. They are substantial. The latter carries an imputation of guilt. acceptance a confession of it. The former has no imputation or confession. It is tantamount to the silence of the witness. It is non-committal. It is the unobtrusive act of the law given protection against the sinister use of his testimony, not like a pardon, requiring him to confess his guilt in order to avoid a conviction of it. It is of little service to assert or deny an analogy between amnesty and a pardon. Mr. Justice Field in Not v. United States said the distinction between them is one rather of philosophical interest than of legal importance. This is so as to their ultimate effect, but there are incidental differences of importance. They are of different character and have different purposes. The one overlooks offense, the other remits punishment. The first is usually addressed to the crimes against the sovereignty of the state, to political offenses, forgiveness being deemed more expedient for the public welfare than prosecution and punishment. The second condones infractions of the peace of the state. It's almost over. Amnesty is usually general, addressed to classes or even communities, a legislative act or under legislation, constitutional or statutory, the act of the supreme magistrate. There may or may not be distinct acts of acceptance. If other rights are dependent upon it and are asserted, there is affirmative evidence of acceptance. Examples are afforded in U.S. v. Klein. If there be no other rights, its only purpose is to stay the movement of the law. Its function is exercised when it overlooks the offense and offender, leaving both in oblivion. Judgment reversed with direction to dismiss the proceedings in contempt and discharge verdict from custody. So, I don't think this supports your position.
So in I don't know, where it says US and then the number 94, what does that mean? Like, would you call it section? Like, it's not a page. Would you?
Page,
like,
yeah, it's page 94 of U.S. reports. Yeah. So,
well, it says page 236 though.
So it depends what you're referencing, right? So like 236 is the volume number of U.S. reports is U.S, and 79 is the overall is the first page of the case, and 94 is the page of where this shows up. So in terms of like the legal citation, the page is 94. 236 is the volume number.
In 94, in the section where it says this brings up the difference between legislative immunity and a pardon, they are substantial. The latter carries the imputation of guilt. So it's saying that a pardon carries the imputation of guilt.
Imputation of guilt is not a determination as to guilt. You understand that?
Have you read this case before?
In law school, I think. Excerpt of it.
Oh, well, then I already lost then. Well, okay.
No, but I didn't know this. I didn't remember I was literally reading this. But imputation of guilt isn't a determination of guilt.
Has this ever come up before? Like, I can't be the only person that thinks this. I know I'm not. Like, have you had this discussion before?
I've heard people say it like a strong version of this, which is like, if you pardon, you admit you're guilty. But I just don't think it follows, right? Because pardons can be for things that are like not even defined, as this opinion suggests. Yes, it carries the imputation of guilt. Yes, it carries the imputation of a confession. People will see it differently, right? Like in the public eye, people will see it differently. So, like,
yeah,
the reason why they're trying to distinguish it is because it doesn't seem like you can like refuse amnesty, right? You can refuse this like legislative grant of amnesty. They're trying to distinguish why it's allowed for someone to refuse a pardon, but not refuse amnesty. So that's what they're trying to suss out. And the reason is like, well, this is more particularized, more personal. And if you accept the pardon, people will think that you're guilty, and they'll see it as a confession. And so they're weighing that against the kind of like more broad legislative amnesty. So that's the distinction. But it's stopping short of saying like, oh, if you accept the
result of this was.
What do you mean? Of the fact pattern? No,
like the result of this like specific case.
Well, yeah, no, this was a prosecution against the guy. So the guy, they're trying to force this guy to testify.
He doesn't accept it, but then what happens?
Like, so then they charge him with contempt. It's like, oh, you don't have a right to refuse to answer questions because you were pardoned, and so there's no threat to you, and so therefore it's contempt of court, or contempt of the grand jury, whatever, right? And so they charge him, and then he's like, wait a second. You can't do that because I never accepted the pardon. And so I am still threatened. And so that's what's going on here. So they're like,
and then what happened?
So they dismiss it, right? Judgment reversed with directions to dismiss the proceedings in contempt and discharge him from custody. So set him free. He's not guilty of contempt because he's not free from potential prosecution because he didn't accept the pardon. Therefore, the pardon has no effect on him.
Okay.
So do you understand?
So that means if someone's pardoned, you can't like what's it called, like depose or whatever, where you
no.
Ask some questions?
If he accepted it, then you would be able to get around the some of the issues with the self-incrimination for sure, right? But that's different.
Is that something where it's like they legally have to like, what's it called where you're like questioning them?
Yeah, you're compelled to give truthful testimony.
So could we do that with anyone who's accepted a pardon?
Depends on what.
Like pertaining to the pardon.
Yeah, all else equal, if someone is pardoned for a thing, presuming the valid reason for the compelled testimony in the first place, whatever, then all that's saying is that the self-incrimination aspect of the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply because you're not
So
actually threatened for incrimination because you're pardoned.
So could like let's say at the end of Trump's term he pardons everyone. Is it the case that like in court they could like everyone that he pardons they could like question them about stuff that's happened in their
if they accepted a pardon, I don't know that they could raise other objections, but probably couldn't raise Fifth Amendment self-incrimination objections, except to the extent that there's overlap with state offenses, and so that's because the Fifth Amendment self-incrimination part also applies to state, so it's a little more complicated. But at a bare minimum, it seems like you couldn't invoke the self-incrimination provision of the Fifth Amendment as to federal prosecutions for which you were pardoned.
What's your thoughts on that? Like Trump pardoning his entire administration?
It's horrible.
Is there any like? Are you guys going to do anything about it?
I don't know what you mean. I don't think there's much we could do. I would try to get rid of the pardon, but that doesn't seem like it's going to help us now.
So
use state enforcement where applicable.
Okay.
Okay.
So I've heard people like Destiny say like he wants to like Nuremberg everyone in the Trump administration. I don't know if you subscribe to that belief.
I have like a pet legal theory that I think will never ever work, where you could try to like prosecute certain people for certain things, and that's to find some way to enforce Section 3 civilly against Trump, and take a swing at getting his pardons to be undone by ultra-virus doctrine. But there's things that would prevent that probably, which include things like the de facto officer doctrine.
Section 3 of what?
14th Amendment.
Which says what?
It
is that the insurrection clause?
Yeah, people who are engaging in insurrection or give aid or comfort.
So you're saying like his pardons are illegitimate because he engaged in insurrection?
Well, I don't think he's the real president. I don't think that he's a president right now. I
think he's the real president.
Correct. I think he's occupying the office under color of law. It would be like someone who's 32 being the president. Like he's not really the president. He's not qualified for it. He's de facto. He's exercising all the powers and duties of the office, but he's not really the president, in my opinion.
Who determines that?
I'm just telling you what I think is what the law is.
No, like for that to go through, who would determine if like you'd have to someone like a court would have to determine that he engaged in insurrection or no?
Depends what Congress sets up under the Anderson decision. It doesn't say it has to be a court.
Well, who would determine it then?
I don't know what Congress would do. I would make it be some, probably some court or some. Yeah, I'd probably make it either be a court or just use Congress to directly enforce Section 3 as to particular people involved in the Jan 6 stuff through legislation itself, and get rid of the.
So
whole
you
court
want
thing.
to. Okay, so you want to say that he committed insurrection, so he was an illegitimate president, so his pardons don't count. And like
I think it's 0.00001% chance of that working. One, you'd have to enforce Section 3. Two, you'd have to go to court and argue the fact. You'd have to get a presidency who's willing to like recharge all the people who are pardoned for all of their substantive offenses, like all of the problems with evidence going stale and witnesses going away and people feeling fucked up. It would go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would probably apply the de facto officer doctrine, and probably no move to say that Trump was never validly occupying an office. They probably wouldn't even decide that and would just say, even if he wasn't, he was de facto officer, and so that all the pardons are still valid. I'm just saying, if there were one method that I would think is possible, that isn't, sorry, I should say, one method that I agree with, that I wouldn't be against them trying, it would be that. I do think it's like such a low possibility event that, not hopeful about it. I don't know what this has to do with anything that we're talking about.
But wasn't that already tried?
No.
Well, wasn't Jack Smith like trying to find him guilty of insurrection with the Jan 6 stuff?
No.
He wasn't. What was he investigating?
He was investigating the various conspiracies to overturn the election, and he charged not insurrection. He charged conspiracy to obstruct rights, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and actual obstruction of proceeding, and conspiracy with respect to what was the fourth conspiracy or the third conspiracy? So it was conspiracy against rights, conspiracy to defraud the United States. So those are the three conspiracies plus the actual obstruction of Congress.
And why did those investigations get dropped?
Because Trump won the presidency, and it's against the DOJ policy to maintain lawsuits against presidents, and so they dropped the lawsuit.
Really?
Why do you?
Do you think he was guilty of that stuff?
Yeah, obviously.
Really?
Yeah,
bro.
Obviously,
dude, you totally have TDS.
Hey, you think he's not guilty?
It.
Wait, do you even know what these offenses are? How would you say that he's not guilty if you don't even know what these are?
I would say he's not guilty because
just be clear. Just to be clear, you don't know what these laws are. You don't know their elements. I just told them to you, and you already think he's not guilty of it.
Yeah, because he won the. You just said it. They got dropped because he won the presidency.
Yeah, it doesn't mean he's not guilty of it, right?
It doesn't mean he is guilty.
I know.
Okay. I didn't say he was or wasn't guilty.
You said I have TDS because I think he is.
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because Trump bad. That's your like whole worldview.
Nice memes. Hey, good shit.
Am I wrong?
You're a troll.
Okay, we're getting off. Why do we even go into the pardon thing?
I am going to like make this video as though you're not a troll, just to be heads up. So people who hear your voice,
you're making a video on me.
Yeah.
What?
I'll do a little edit, and no one's going to know that you're a troll because I'm just going to cut off the part where you admit it, or when it's clear you are.
What? You're going to make a video on me.
Yeah, and no one's going to know it's a troll.
I didn't sign up to this.
I know, but no one's going to know it's a troll. That's the sad part of the video. They'll all be like, "Oh, this dipshit conservative guy."
What did I say that makes me a dipshit?
No. Listen, hey, have a good night. All right, last person, then we're done. Yo, what up, Magic?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
1 second. I'm just hanging drywall. Okay, can you hear me now?
You're hanging drywall. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I think that last call is a good example of some of the points I wanted to make. Anyways,
which ones?
Well, first off, of the statements that I think Democrats have made so far, like, what's your opinion on the array of tweets that have been and statements that have been released about the Maduro situation?
Some are good, some are bad.
Which is a good one? Which is a bad one? Do you think?
Ruben Gallego was good. Hakeem Jeffries is bad.
Okay, yeah, no, I more or less agree with that. I think that like a lot of how like people talk to the right is just kind of pointless in many ways, because they're not really interested. Like the last call is a perfect example of where you can walk someone through all the steps, and then he'll say you have TDS, right? Like, what do you even do with people like that? And then with some of the Democrat statements, and I think some of your statements too, I think that they just kind of, I'm sure you're correct legally and all that, but like they kind of enable a bit of a easy dismissal of everything you're saying really quickly. Because if you say, yes, Maduro was a bad guy, terrible guy, dictator, stole the election, this and that, but we didn't have a right to take him out. Is that kind of roughly how you feel?
No, there's more to that. So no.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
agree. I do agree with all the statements you made, but that's not a sum of my position.
Okay. I mean, I think that that's all those statements are, more or less true. It's just that I think that that sets people up to say, okay, so he's a bad guy and we took him out. So what? And that's the end of the discussion. I think Democrats are kind of pretty responsible for like playing into this over and over. I can go a little bit international here too, because like Emmanuel Macron's statement, I think was just horrible. Like the Machado stuff is just like, what are we even doing?
I don't know. You're trying to be like, don't say Maduro's a bad person.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but like
I think
that's stupid because fuck Maduro.
Okay, but then everyone's going to agree with Trump on this.
Yeah, but okay, I mean, prove that. They're all going to agree. You say that about Iraq War. In retrospect, the Iraq War is not popular.
I know, but like it was 2 years, before it became unpopular. Like when it happened, it was actually pretty popular, right?
Agree with that, but this is a very different situation after we have the Iraq War as something to point to as well, and at a time when there's just so much bullshit and mistakes that Trump is making. Coming out and being like, for example, you're basically suggesting if someone asks me, is Maduro a bad person, for me to be like, I'm not going to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's a better approach.
Okay. How does that work for like, so you think that works for like, oh yeah, Hamas, do you disavow Hamas? And you should be like, oh yeah, no.
I think that by now, if someone's asking that question, like they know, it's been 2.5 years. Like I think people kind of are at the point where if you're asking that question, you're kind of not coming at it in good faith. I mean, maybe you are, and then obviously people will say yes, right? Like, but that's not the intent. When people ask that question, the intent is not to just double check and make sure. It's to try and
not answer the question. The question isn't whether or not people are trying something with that. It's what you think you should do and what you think is good optics. And I don't think it's good optics to be like, yeah, I'm not going to condemn Maduro and what he did and what his people do in Venezuela. It'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to condemn Saddam Hussein, who's like a brutal genocidal dictator, or Hamas, who are fucking
no, but like
religio-conservative.
What if you say it's irrelevant?
Nuts.
Because like, do you think that's relevant here?
I think yes. I think that it is relevant. The character of the regime, yes, it's relevant. Is it dispositive? No, but it's absolutely relevant.
Okay, I think it's it's a Piers Morgan approach too. I think that to always make sure you are conceding to the other side's framing of things before you kind of engage.
It's the truth. Maduro is a piece of shit. You agree?
I know that. Yes, like obviously.
Okay, so why would I be like look like a piece of shit, look like a weasel fuck by saying, oh yeah, I'm not here to defend, or like I'm not here to condemn Maduro, or say like, no, I'm not going to condemn it just because you asked it. Like, why would I look like an idiot doing that and put my credibility on the line, as people might think I'm like a tanky apologist for this loser fuck who has made Latin America worse in almost every way?
Well, because then they're just going to dismiss. But if you say, for instance, yeah, Maduro, all of the things you just said, bad guy, blah blah blah, and then they say, okay, so then what's the issue?
Yeah, so then you say, this isn't about whether Maduro is a good or bad person. The question is Trump's conduct. This fucking war, regardless of whether he's a good or bad dude, is illegal, A. B, it's done by his own words to extract oil, and or the legal rationale, which is to stop drug conspiracies after he just pardoned some motherfucker. So I don't care if he's a bad dude. We don't go around disrupting the administrations of every bad dude. And in this case, it's so obvious that his entire intent is to try to extract resources and benefits from Venezuela. He doesn't give a fuck about the people. And so good guy or bad guy, I'm against the action. What's wrong with that?
I think that's good, but I think that you should start with that. Like, it's more effective to start with that by saying it's irrelevant if he's a good or bad guy, because this is still wrong regardless, right? Because they're going to try and hyper focus on that point. And it is irrelevant, right? Like, I don't think it's relevant whether he's a good or bad guy, or Saddam was a good or bad guy.
If he was if he was genociding the entire Venezuelan people, you would be like, okay, don't go ahead.
I mean, we're not doing it in Rwanda or anything. You know, like I don't know. It's like, would I do it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it is relevant, right?
You know.
So it's relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I still like. Maybe it's relevant to like you, I think, and maybe
No, to you. You just said if he
some
did.
people. I think
there are certain
yeah.
things that would be bad enough that you would go in.
Yeah, I just don't think that like anything, you know, Maduro or any, you know, anyone since like Hitler, right, like is kind of at that level yet, or like, you know, infringing on other people's boundaries. One exception maybe would be like Trump, right? Like Trump, I think, is pretty blatantly disregarding, you know, boundaries and just kind of taking the mask off, so to speak. And I don't like that. I can't do anything about it, but I don't think that like arguing about whether, you know, he's good or bad is going to actually change his mind. In fact, I think it's going to kind of solidify people's mind against. I think that like people will tend to side with Trump, regardless of whether it's right or wrong.
Okay, are you just saying that people will do it regardless of messaging? So then, what's the point of this whole thing?
God.
You're like,
well, if you're going to say yes, Maduro is a bad guy, he's a monster, he's a this and that, like Trump isn't making that argument. He's saying it's for oil. So why are you addressing this? Right?
No, because other people are making the argument.
Other
people are making the argument.
Okay, but Trump's not making that argument.
So,
you know, so how is that relevant? Because he said we're doing this for oil.
It helps me. I can say you might think it's for humanitarian reasons, but that's not what Trump says.
Yeah.
Because I have to deal with people who I'm talking to, not Trump, because I'm not talking to Trump. You understand that? So I have to deal with arguments that people who I'm talking to are saying, and I don't get the opportunity to be like, oh, you only are allowed to say what Trump says. Like, no one is going to accept that. Like, no, I can make my own arguments, and I have to address them. So I can't just be like, haha, but it's not what Trump said. Because they'll be like, oh, who cares what Trump says? He's crazy. But I believe it's justified for this or that reason. That's what some Democrats are saying, and some centrists.
Mm.
So
okay, so like maybe the difference here is, yeah, I think that like I agree with you basically in your assessment on the statements from Democrats and everything they've said so far. I think that some are a lot worse than others. I think the worst one was Schumer when he's like, well, let's wait and see. But overall, I think like the centrists are kind of doing what I'm saying, is where they're like, first off, just saying, yes, Maduro is a bad guy, blah, 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 but he didn't consult us first, or he didn't do this first, or he did this first. And I think that if you just are leading with, you know, the framing that Maduro is a horrible monster.
No, that right? sucks. No, the reason that sucks is because it's not actually a critique of the action itself. That's more of like, oh, because there it's just really like, you didn't consult us from a policy perspective, not from the legal requirement perspective. It's from
it sounds like you're like more butthurt that like, you know, he didn't ask you before.
So that sucks because you're not,
and
you're not capturing the main reasons it's bad, which are it's illegal, B, it's stupid, C, it's against international law, D, like all of these different reasons, and just being like, well, we're very, very concerned, highly concerned, really concerned. Those statements suck. Now, some leaders have different constraints. Am I going to blame Zelensky because he's like kind of tongue in cheek about it? No, because he has, he has his own fucking shit. And so same thing with the EU leaders. I groan or whatever, but I'm going to put more blame on like the Democrats who are not in their positions and should be being stronger on it. So I hear you.
Like Emmanuel Macron, I think is like, I don't know. Like I thought, like I hate Keir Starmer, and I think Keir Starmer's statement is better than Macron's. Like Macron was basically, you know, he talked more about Machado almost than Maduro, and it's like no mention of anything other than we stand with the Venezuelan people, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? So, like, you know,
but the reason they're doing it is because they don't want to get fucking sanctioned. They don't want to get sanctions from Trump to just like tear up the fuck out of their shit and fuck around. That's why. It's because they're all being bullied.
Yeah, like I think that's true. Like, I think that they're being bullied. And, like, I don't know why Trump would stop here. Like, if, like, I don't know. What if he wants to take out any other country?
I don't think he necessarily will. I think that people are severely discounting the extent to which he's willing to intervene in other places.
Okay. Do you think, like, engaging some bad faith arguments in good faith kind of, like, hurts your own positions? Sometimes, not you specifically, but I'm saying, like, in general, when I see people go in the news, right? And they'll say, you know, they'll always again, concede on a lot of framing, and then say, he did this illegally, he did this, and by that point, I feel like
Sometimes yes,
the
sometimes no.
narrative
Depends.
train has
Depends.
already left the
Sometimes yes,
station.
sometimes no. The people
Okay.
who are smart about it and who are good pundits go on there and notice the bad faith framing and notice the structural things and be like, by the way, I just want to note for everybody, we're talking about a president who did this, and that, and he promised no new wars. Like, and so this framing, the fact that we're even doing this and not immediately calling for his impeachment based on this, and that is fucked up. So the good pundits will actually take advantage and will do well. And so no, I think that like the strategy of just like not talking to bad faith people, I'm not sure that I believe it. I think you need to be active and everywhere and just go everywhere you can and just saturate your message.
I agree. But like, I think that you got to be at least tactical about it too, where you're like, you know what they're looking to do, which is get some easy clips of you saying, well, Maduro's a bad guy and blah, blah, blah. And, the what's the other thing I was hearing? Well, the operation was, okay. And then that's it. All right. Like, that's the clip. And it's like, Trump's like, well, they're even saying I did a good thing. They said it was executed amazingly. And I just don't think most people ever bother looking beyond that. So it's like, well, you just gave them kind of the talking point they needed. And
I think a good rule of thumb is to be truthful and to be attacking. And I will intend to do both of those things and just be like, yeah, he's a bad dude. All right. There's a lot of bad dudes everywhere. You agree? And that's Trump has done this a lot. Right? Like Trump is you think we're all angels? Like, there are bad dudes who are running our government right now. I wouldn't support people cooing the fucking government in our country right now. And, that's true also, by the way, of Saudi Arabia. He's a dictator. It's true of Russia. It's true of China. Doesn't mean that we need to go invade those places just because there's a bad dude. It's actually, when someone says, well, he's a bad dude, right? They open themselves up to be very vulnerable. Okay, so your China guy's a bad dude, so why don't we invade them next? Presumably because you think it's not enough for them to be a bad dude. And also, if he's a bad dude, why didn't Trump say that? Why didn't Trump actually explain that? He didn't explain that. He just said it was for oil, and then his lawyer said it's because of drug enforcement, which is fucking laughable. So you're claiming things that aren't actually what's motivating the administration, isn't likely to occur, and isn't a standard that you would ever hold Trump to. And it's all to apparently give humanitarian benefit to the Venezuelan people, but that's not what's going to happen. I think that people can make that point succinctly, not all. But when you just like deny it and don't answer it, it's like, wait. Hold on, hang on. I want to ask you a question. Will you condemn Nicolas Maduro? And if someone asks you,
I think that,
no, this isn't about that. And then everyone notices that you're dodging instead of just being like, yeah, of course, obviously he's a fucking piece of shit, but that doesn't mean we should fucking do illegal stuff.
Like, no, I don't necessarily think it's taken like that. I think that like it takes the wind out of your sails if you're on the attack, because that's like a very easy, like, just pocket sand
own it.
Where they're like, oh, well,
you agree Hamas is bad? No shit, Hamas is bad. No shit, Maduro is bad. You don't need to be fucking told. And that's not the question. That's a simplistic question you're asking. Obviously, I'm not in favor of dictators, you idiot. The question is whether the action taken in response is justified. You use that energy against them, almost as an offense. How dare you?
And then Piers Morgan says, okay, so you don't disagree that he was a bad guy. You just disagree in how it was done, right?
But Piers, no, that's not exactly true either. Just because someone's a bad guy doesn't mean that it's just procedurally, I don't agree with how it was done.
But you do think Maduro was a bad guy here, don't you?
I
do just said that.
I obviously think Maduro is a bad guy. I also thought that Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. I also think that Putin's a bad guy. I also think that Xi Jinping is a bad person. Do you want to invade all those countries too? You want to invade Russia? You want to invade Saudi Arabia? I think Netanyahu's a bad guy. Do I want to invade Israel? No.
Right. So it comes down to opinion. You
everything
think
comes
that
down to opinion.
Maduro is a bad guy, but you didn't.
Hey, isn't this an opinion show? Doesn't everything come down to opinion? It's all opinion. We're talking about opinions. So you saying it's opinion is like banal and useless and a waste of breath. Yeah, it's an opinion. Guess who's saying it? Me.
That's your opinion.
Yeah, and it's your opinion. And it's my opinion.
I happen to agree with you.
Yeah. Great job.
I happen to agree with you.
Great observation.
I think Maduro is a very bad guy.
I'm actually getting triggered. Okay. I'm leaving. I'm actually getting triggered. But I love you very much. You should come back. Holy shit! I get triggered. I need to go because I'm triggered. If you like the stream, guys, just give it a like. Subscribe to the channel. Mems if you got them. But we're gonna do amazing things this week. Word war debate this week. Word war debate. Also, I think Drew Pavlou, I think we're on for Wednesday his time, which might be Tuesday my time. I don't fucking know. I don't know. You appreciate the explanation of the War Powers Resolution? Yeah, no, I'm glad you like that. Because when you go through it, you can see how it's actually the opposite of what everyone says, It's the opposite. It's literally the opposite. But I'm glad you guys, and I knew that. And so knowing that, Exel, and imagine me sitting there just like watching Lactoid just talk massive amounts of garbage and then try to weasel out of the concession. Just to try to imagine me like knowing what it says, knowing that it's like the direct opposite of what Lactoid is saying there, and nonetheless having to stomach him sitting there and Wick trying to rub his belly a little bit while he accuses me of bad faith. Absolutely wild. All right, I love you guys very, very, very much. I know we need to get Westlaw at some point for real. I don't know if I would ever show Westlaw though, because of IP reasons. But love you guys very much. Like the stream, like it. It's good for you. Funny little thing you do.